Chapter 3076. How could he have imagined that one day he would be discussing marriage with a 7 or 8-year-old child? Xiao Chen smiled as he looked at who was speaking with a straight face. In fact, Xiao Chen liked who very much. Moreover, he wanted to go to the outside world so much. Xiao Chen had considered this problem. With the protection of the temple, even if whose cultivation talent was extremely ordinary, he could at least successfully step into the martial Tao. It would not be a big problem for him to cultivate to the Tao transformation realm or even the Emperor realm. Originally, Xiao Chen had thought about this, but later he secretly checked whose body and found that he could not cultivate it all. Perhaps it was because of the birth of this world. The meridians in the bodies of the creatures born here were only mortal meridians, which could not accommodate the world energy at all. If even the world energy could not accommodate and comprehend, then even if Xiao Chen had countless methods and many treasures, it would be useless. It was like if you did not have a cup, how could you get water? If you held it with your hands, it would leak out sooner or later. This world was gradually being perfected. Xiao Chen believed that in the future, whose descendants would definitely be able to evolve in essence. At that time, they would be able to comprehend the world energy and even figure out their own cultivation methods. But now, as their ancestors, who and the others had no way to cultivate it all. In this case, Xiao Chen also dispelled the idea of taking who to the outside world. After all, with whose lifespan as an ordinary person, he might have aged after just one trip. For ordinary people, the outside world was too far away and their lives were too short. At least in Xiao Chen's eyes, they were like fireflies that disappeared in a flash. After chatting with who for a while, Xiao Chen patted him on the head and said, "Go ahead. Go, time is running out. In a while, your father will come looking for you with that kind of stick." "Oh, then Uncle Xiao Chen, I'll go first." He ran out of the courtyard like a wisp of smoke. Xiao Chen smiled and shook his head. The people here were very happy, but also a little unfortunate. This was because their lives were too short. However, without knowing what was going on in the outside world, they were happy. Because in the eyes of these villagers, humans only had a few decades in their lives. If you told them that someone could live for hundreds or thousands of years, they probably wouldn't believe it. Slowly getting up, Xiao Chen also planned to cook by himself. After coming here, he had already completely integrated into the life of an ordinary person. 3 meals a day were definitely indispensable. If Shui Rou and the others were here, they would definitely like this place. He skillfully boiled the water in the pot and soon prepared a simple dinner. After pouring a cup of ordinary liquor, Xiao Chen sat alone in the courtyard and drank leisurely. At this moment, the ordinary wild boar meat in his mouth seemed to be better than those spiritual treasures of heaven and earth. Every bite made him feel extremely comfortable. However, as they were eating, Xiao Chen suddenly sensed a mysterious fluctuation coming from afar. With a slight frown, Xiao Chen's figure slowly disappeared from where he stood. Following the direction of the aura, Xiao Chen appeared on top of a tall mountain far away from the village. This was an active volcano. The surrounding temperature was so high that it could melt a person. But to Xiao Chen, this was nothing. He gazed at the interior of the volcano with a faint gaze. Something was being born inside. This aura. Without hesitation, Xiao Chen stepped into the volcano. The scorching magma around Xiao Chen couldn't get close to him, let alone hurt Xiao Chen. Along the way to the bottom of the magma, Xiao Chen finally saw what he was looking for. And this sight left Xiao Chen's eyes glinting with excitement. Heaven and Earth's core. This heaven and Earth's core was a legendary treasure. This was something he heard from Little Qing. According to Little Qing, heaven and earth were actually the same as living beings. A complete heaven and earth could not only give birth to heaven and earth spirits, but also give birth to a heaven and earth's core. The so-called heaven and earth's core wasn't the real heaven and earth's core. Instead, it was formed from the purest and most primitive energy of heaven and earth. It was somewhat similar to the origin power, but of a much higher level. The two weren't on the same level at all. In other words, the aura emanating from the heaven and earth's core was probably equivalent to the origin power. This went to show how much higher the heaven and earth's core was compared to the origin power. He didn't expect a treasure that he had never seen before to actually appear here. Little Ching said that this heaven and earth's core can only be encountered and not sought. It's a legendary existence, but no one has truly seen it, not even Little Ching. I didn't expect to actually encounter it. Suppressing his excitement, Xiao Chun said unhurriedly, if he could successfully refine this heaven and earth's core, it would definitely be beneficial to him. Sure enough, this world is my blessed land. Reaching out to touch the heaven and earth's core, Xiao Chun felt an indescribable feeling just by touching a wisp of aura emanating from it. How should he put it? It was strange. It was as though a string in his heart had been touched. He understood something, but it was still very vague. This was just a wisp of aura from the heaven and earth's core. Without hesitation, Xiao Chun left a divine consciousness clone in the village without hesitation. As for his original body, he began to refine the heaven and earth's core. With this heaven and earth's core, Xiao Chun was confident that his strength could increase again. Sitting cross-legged, the heaven and earth's core seemed to be guided by something and was slowly pulled above Xiao Chen's head. A pure white light slowly enveloped Xiao Chen's entire body. Under the cover of the light, Xiao Chun felt extremely comfortable. His heart was also incomparably peaceful. At the same time, his cultivation, which had been stagnant, began to circulate on its own. It circled around his meridians and circulated continuously. Every time it circulated, his meridians seemed to become stronger. It wasn't the heaven and earth's spiritual energy. The power emanating from the heaven and earth's core was something that even Xiao Chun had never seen before. It was an unfamiliar and extremely mysterious power. It was as though it had transcended all other powers in the world. If Lin Yun, Mu Ling Xian, Dongfang Yun, Mo He, Ancestor He, and the others knew that Xiao Chun had actually found a heaven and earth's core by chance, they would probably be envious. They would probably be envious to death. This was simply something that could only be encountered and not sought after. Without great luck, it was impossible to find it. However, Xiao Chun had found such a peerless treasure so easily. With the help of the heaven and earth's core, Xiao Chun directly entered a meditative state and began to cultivate. Although it was very slow, it was already an extremely pleasant surprise for Xiao Chun. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3077. At Xiao Chen's level, it was extremely difficult to increase one's cultivation by even the slightest bit. With the help of the heart of the universe, Xiao Chun was slowly improving. The people in the village outside had no idea that Xiao Chun was here. That divine sense clone was exactly the same as Xiao Chun. The ordinary people in the village could not see any clues at all. Time passed slowly. The energy contained in the heart of the universe was enormous and extremely difficult to refine. It was Xiao Chen's first time coming into contact with the heart of the universe. However, even with his cultivation, it was extremely slow and difficult to refine the energy in the heart of the universe. In Xiao Chen's opinion, even if the ancient living beings obtained the heart of the universe, they would not be able to do anything but refine it bit by bit. It was very slow, but Xiao Chun was extremely excited. This was the true top treasure in the world. As long as he could refine the heart of the universe, Xiao Chen's strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Even his physique would probably undergo a transformation. He focused all his attention on refining the heart of the universe. At the same time, in the land of living beings, several months had passed. The prodigies who passed the preliminary test had also been cultivating in the divine temple for several months. Although they were puzzled as to why the final test had not begun, these prodigies were very excited. That was because the cultivation environment here was definitely the best they had ever seen. To be able to cultivate here was already a great opportunity for them. Even if the final test had not begun and they were allowed to cultivate here, these young prodigies would not have any complaints. Not to mention, ever since they passed the preliminary test and entered the divine temple, they were given a fixed amount of cultivation resources every day. This kind of treatment simply blinded everyone's eyes. One must know that the cultivation resources given by the Divine Temple were all ordinary trash. Take the elixirs, for example. Almost every elixir was of the upper grade, at the very least. There were even some supreme-grade elixirs. These first-grade elixirs had very little poison in them and were extremely pure. Using them to cultivate would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. From this, one could see how strong the Divine Temple's foundation was. Any bit of resources was enough to excite these young prodigies. While some people were cultivating diligently, there were naturally others who were curious or worried. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to pass the test. But on this day, the dozen or so temple powerhouses in charge of the preliminary test appeared once more. The final test begins now. His voice reverberated throughout the small world. Hearing this, all the geniuses exited their cultivation and hurried out of their rooms. Had the final test finally begun? Whether they could continue to stay in the temple or pack up and leave would depend on the final test. Before long, all the prodigies had gathered together. Looking at the dozen or so experts of the temple, they all held their breaths and waited for their next arrangement. No one dared to be careless in the face of the final test. Looking at the performance of the many geniuses, the leading expert of the Divine Temple nodded slightly. Not bad. As expected of the geniuses gathered from all over the land of all living beings. None of them were mediocre. If such people were properly nurtured, they might not become top experts, but their achievements would definitely not be weak. All of you have passed the preliminary test. You have stood out among countless geniuses. The preliminary test tested your talent. Being able to pass means that you are geniuses among geniuses. At the very least, in terms of talent, you have surpassed 99% of the people in the land of all living beings. That's right. The path of cultivation does not rely solely on talent. Apart from talent, it also relies on temperament and willpower. Without firm willpower and a stable temperament, even if you are geniuses with supreme talent, it will be very difficult for you to achieve great things. As such, the final test tests your willpower and temperament. He didn't keep them in suspense and directly stated the goal of the final test, temperament and willpower. As soon as he finished speaking, the leader of the powerhouses took out a green flame from his storage ring. This green flame was personally refined by Mu Lingxian. While it could bring extreme pain to a person, it would not cause any harm to the person it touched. It was specifically used to test their willpower. Those who could endure the roasting of the azure fire were all people with strong willpower. This is the azure fire that divine ancestor Mu Lingxian personally refined for you. Now, everyone, enter the azure fire. Anyone who can endure for a day will pass. With that, the expert waved his hand. Tens of thousands of azure flames quickly landed in front of everyone. Everyone had an azure fire burning in front of them. Lumu looked at the azure fire in front of him and didn't feel any danger. Out of curiosity, he reached out to touch it. But as soon as he touched it, Lumu felt an intense pain spread from his fingertips to his entire body. It was very painful. The pain was unbearable. But after he broke away from the fire, he found that he wasn't injured at all. There were no burn marks on his fingers either. This blue fire was really strange. It could make people feel intense pain, but at the same time, it would not cause any harm to them. A test of willpower, huh? Lumu murmured softly. He knew that this test wouldn't be so easy. All right, everyone enter the azure fire. If you can't endure it, you can withdraw with confidence. But you will lose the right to enter the sacred hall. The expert from the sacred hall finally spoke. Then, all the geniuses walked into the azure fire one by one. Being enveloped by the azure fire, intense pain spread throughout everyone's body. They even felt like they were going to be burned alive. But no one was willing to withdraw, because in the past few months, they had completely seen the experts of the sacred hall. They knew that if they could cultivate in the sacred hall, it would be a great help to them. Since they had already come this far, no one wanted to fail at the last moment. Even though the intense pain was unbearable, everyone gritted their teeth and persevered. To reach the peak of martial arts, willpower was essential. No matter how talented you were, It was impossible to have a smooth sailing life. Everyone understood this. Now that the opportunity to enter the sacred hall was right in front of them, no one wanted to give up. They wanted to seize this opportunity and soar to the top. Damn it, I won't lose. I must enter the sacred hall. I can't lose. The sacred hall, I won't be eliminated. The same thought emerged in the minds of countless people. They had entered the sage hall and had already come this far. How could they admit defeat just because of a little pain? It was impossible. Even if they had to give it their all, they had to persevere. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3078. They watched the prodigy disciples grit their teeth and persevere in the blue fire. 2 hours had passed, but so far, no one had chosen to give up. No matter how painful it was, these prodigies chose to grit their teeth and persevere because the chance to change their fate was right in front of them. As expected of those who passed the preliminary test, these kids are pretty good. Yeah, this blue fire was personally refined by Lord Mu Lingxian. I've tried it myself, and it's really hard to persevere. Haha, you're a monster too. It's not like we're testing you. Why do you have to try it yourself? Since we're the examiners, if we can't do it ourselves, how can we have the face to ask others? Yes, you're right. The dozen or so powerhouses from the sacred temple were very satisfied with the performance of these prodigy disciples. Their talent was top-notch, and their willpower seemed to be pretty good too. They were naturally gratified that so many prodigies had emerged from the land of all living beings. As members of the sacred temple, they had long treated the land of all living beings as their home. They were the rulers of the land of all living beings, the protectors of the land of all living beings, so they naturally hoped that the land of all living beings could become stronger. Many of the older generation's powerhouses had exhausted their talents, and the future belonged to the younger generation. If the land of all living beings wanted to ensure its longevity, then the growth of the younger generation was very important. This included the powerhouses from the sacred temple. To be honest, they weren't young either. Now that some of them had broken through to become world lords, this was the end of their lives. It was almost impossible for them to advance to the level of primordial life forms. Time passed slowly, but the dozen or so powerhouses from the sacred temple didn't leave. Instead, they stayed with these young prodigies. The intense pain caused many of their faces to contort, and they clenched their teeth. Their foreheads were covered in cold sweat, and their veins were bulging. It was getting closer and closer to the end of the day, and no one wanted to fail at this time. Finally, under the bitter perseverance of countless people, the test finally came to an end. The blue fire slowly dissipated, and the intense pain receded like the tide. They felt as if they had been reborn. The pain had dissipated, and everyone was panting heavily. There had never been a moment when breathing was so enjoyable. After a day of willpower testing, the final result was that no one was eliminated. Such a result made the dozen or so temple powerhouses in charge of the assessment smile. The performance of these little fellows had completely exceeded the expectations of the temple. Not bad. Congratulations on passing the willpower test. The leader of the group laughed heartily. There was an undisguised look of admiration in his eyes as he looked at these elite disciples. These little fellows were the future of the land of all living beings. Based on their current performance, the land of all living beings would definitely become even stronger in their hands in the future. Hearing that he had passed the test, everyone revealed a smile on their faces. He had finally persevered. Rest for a day. Tomorrow, we'll take the last test, temperament. Without wasting any time, the cultivator from the Temple of the Divine Hall said something and left. The temperament test was the final test and also the most difficult. He hoped that these little fellows would be able to pass. Lumu, how is it? Do you have confidence in tomorrow's test? Wang Kuan asked Lumu. The temporary joy caused everyone to gather in small groups and chat. The two of them were considered the cream of the crop among the elites, but Qinghua's test still put a lot of pressure on them. Not to mention the temperament test that would begin tomorrow. No one knew what method the temple would use, but one thing was for sure. the difficulty would not be low. Lu Mu said confidently, "No matter what, I will definitely succeed." "You're quite confident, but I also think so. You and I will definitely be able to enter the temple." Wang Kuan was also confident. Their talents were at the top in all aspects. No matter what test the temple gave them, they would not fail. This was absolute confidence. The night passed quickly. Early the next morning, the dozen or so powerhouses from the temple arrived as scheduled. This time, many of the geniuses had been waiting for a long time. Knowing that today was the final test, the geniuses naturally would not be the slightest bit careless. Seeing that all the geniuses were full of energy, the leader of the temple powerhouses smiled. "Looks like all of you are almost ready. Let's begin. Today is the temperament test, and, at the same time, the final test. Those who pass can truly enter the temple and enjoy the cultivation resources of the temple. At the same time, the powerhouses of the temple will personally guide you, possibly including the divine ancestor. The divine ancestor would personally guide them in their cultivation." As soon as he said that, a fiery look appeared in the eyes of the geniuses. In a land of all living, everyone worshipped the divine ancestor. They were the gods of the land of all living. As long as they were around, the land of all living would be safe. Before this, no one dared to believe that the divine ancestor would personally guide them in their cultivation. They did not even dare to say that they would be able to see the divine ancestor. Looking at the excited faces of the crowd, the powerhouse from the temple smiled. Then, with a wave of his hand, 100 arrays appeared on the field. The method of the temperament assessment was to use an array formation. Entering the array formation was equivalent to entering a whole new world. The arrays could use various methods to tempt and mislead the participants according to their obsessions or thoughts. Once they could not hold on to their hearts and were lost in the arrays, it would be considered a failure. As long as they could withstand the test, hold on to their hearts, and break the arrays, it would be considered a success. It could be said that this test was much more difficult than the previous tests of willpower. They were not on the same level at all. For these young fellows, it was already extremely difficult to hold on to their hearts in such an illusion, let alone break the arrays. That was even more difficult. Moreover, these arrays were all personally refined by Li Tian. They were of a very high grade. It could be said that in the entire land of all living, there was no array that could surpass this grade. Although Li Tian was only a primordial being in the temple, he was definitely the #1 person in the Tao of arrays. This was because none of the divine ancestors had studied arrays. Of course, at the level of Shao Chun and the others, arrays were actually not that useful anymore. Naturally, they would not spend a lot of effort studying them. Groups of 100 enter the arrays one after another. Begin now. The temperament test had officially begun. 100 geniuses entered the secret realm in turns. As soon as the powerhouse from the temple finished speaking, the first group of geniuses stepped into the arrays. The side branches took their seats, and the arrays were activated. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3079. Lu Mu happened to be one of the people in the first group. As the array was activated, Lu Mu's consciousness was instantly sucked away. This was the power of the array. After a moment of dizziness, Lu Mu found himself in a room. This room was too familiar to Lu Mu. This was the room where he lived when he was young. It was exactly the same as his memories. The scene was 100% restored and extremely realistic. Even though he knew that everything was fake, he could not help but miss everything in front of him. Mua! At the same time, a shout suddenly came from outside the door. Hearing this voice, Mu Chen's entire body trembled, and he froze on the spot. Mother! Hearing this voice that he had yearned for day and night, Lu Mu could no longer hold it in. In Lu Mu's heart, there was one thing that he was obsessed with, and that was his mother. No one knew how sad Lu Mu was when his mother passed away when he was young. Since then, Lu Mu had buried his mother deep in his heart. Although he had never told anyone about this, Lu Mu could not help but miss his mother in the depths of his heart every night. Although many years had passed, and Lu Mu had already grown from an ignorant child to a proud son of heaven. But even so, his mother still occupied an extremely important position in his heart. Many times, Lu Mu even wondered if his mother would not have died if he had been able to grow up a little earlier. He would have been able to take care of his mother. Just when Lu Mu's thoughts were running wild, the door was pushed open and a woman wearing a simple long dress walked in. The woman's appearance could not be considered extremely beautiful, but she gave off a quiet and gentle feeling. Especially the smile on her lips, it was as if it could warm one's heart, making one involuntarily have a good impression of her. Mu'er, why didn't you answer your mother when she called you? The woman was naturally Lu Mu's mother. Looking at the familiar mother in front of him, she was exactly the same as the one in his memories. Lu Mu's eyes instantly moistened. How many years had it been? The person that he had yearned for day and night had once again appeared in front of him. Lu Mu did not know how to describe his feelings. Looking at the stunned Lu Mu, the woman stepped forward and gently patted his forehead. What's wrong? Why are you standing there like a fool? Mother! Hearing the beautiful woman's words, Lu Mu shouted in a hoarse voice. She had never thought that she would be able to see her mother again one day. She couldn't help but reach out to hug her mother. The child had grown up and was even a head taller than his mother. He leaned his head gently on his mother's shoulder. Lu Mu could even smell the unique fragrance on her body. This was the smell that he had always smelled when he was young. You rascal, you're already so old, yet you're still like this. Lu Mu's mother smiled at Lu Mu's action and patted him on the back. All right, it's time to eat. Hearing his mother's words, Lu Mu smiled and nodded. It was the same home, the same courtyard, and his mother's unique craftsmanship. It was as if he had returned to his childhood. The only difference was that Lu Mu had grown up. Lu Mu wolfed down the food cooked by his mother. His mother watched him with a smile on her face. She even reminded Lu Mu to eat slowly. You child, why are you wolfing down the food? Mother's cooking is delicious. Hearing this, Lu Mu said vaguely. The taste of the food might be ordinary to others, but to Lu Mu, it was the most delicious thing in the world. It was something that he had always missed in his life. In the illusion, Lu Mu felt his mother's gentleness, which made him extremely dependent on her. All the regrets in his heart seemed to have been made up for at this moment. Being able to stay by his mother's side, Lu Mu felt very satisfied. Time passed quickly in the illusion. Lu Mu stayed by his mother's side like this. 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. However, Lu Mu had no intention of leaving. This was obviously not a good sign, because if this continued, Lu Mu would very likely be completely lost in the illusion. However, there was no one who could help him now. Whether he could break through the illusion and break the formation depended on Lu Mu himself. No one knew what one would encounter in the illusion. In the outside world, more than 2 hours had passed. Many people had broken through the illusion and passed the test. At this time, only a few people were still struggling in the illusion, and Lu Mu was one of them. The dozen or so divine temple experts in charge of the test looked at Lu Mu with surprise in their eyes. They had naturally paid attention to Lu Mu. After all, his talent was one of the best among all the geniuses. He was one of the most promising seedlings. But now everyone else had passed the test, but Lu Mu had not moved at all. This was a little strange. What's wrong with Lu Mu? With his ability, he shouldn't be like this. Maybe he has some obsession in his heart. After all, the formation that Lord Li Tian personally created is not simple. Obsession in his heart? This is not a good thing. So let's wait and see. I hope this kid doesn't fail miserably. The dozen or so divine temple experts were worried for Lu Mu. If Lu Mu could not pass the test, it would be a pity. With his talent, if he could be nurtured by the divine temple, his future achievements would definitely be better than most people. It was indeed hard to accept being eliminated just because of an obsession in one's heart. Not only were the divine temple experts in charge of the test paying attention to Lu Mu, Wang Kuan and Wu Xia were also looking at Lu Mu's figure and frowning. What's wrong with this guy? Wang Kuan was speechless. In his opinion, with Lu Mu's temperament, He should have broken through the formation long ago. But why was there no movement until now? Could it be that he was already trapped in the formation? That was impossible. He was very familiar with Lu Mu and knew what kind of person he was. His determination was far from what ordinary people could compare to. If others could break through the formation and pass the test, there was no reason for Lu Mu to fail. Maybe it's his own choice. He saw the person he wanted to see in the formation. Wu Xia said indifferently. She was right. Lu Mu was right. Wasn't Lu Mu the person he had always wanted to see in the array? A person he would never forget for the rest of his life. Please add, recommend, vote. Chapter 3080. Many people in the outside world were secretly paying attention to Lu Mu. In the dreamland, Lu Mu had been living by his mother's side for dozens of years. Although it was an illusion, everything was extremely real. With Li Tian's mastery of formations, it was naturally not difficult for him to achieve this. For decades, Lu Mu had forgotten about cultivation and everything in the outside world. He only cared about enjoying life with his mother by his side. It seemed that he was really immersed in the illusion and had completely sunk into oblivion and confusion. But in reality, only Lu Mu himself knew what he was thinking. As usual, Lu Mu woke up early in the morning. His mother had cooked breakfast, but this time Lu Mu did not eat. Instead, he came to his mother with a calm expression and a smile on his face. "Mother, I should go." "Go? Where are you going?" Hearing this, his mother was stunned. In response, Lu Mu said in a gentle tone, "This place does not belong to me. I'm really happy to be able to enter this illusion." In fact, Lu Mu had not fallen into the illusion from the beginning to the end. The reason why he was not in a hurry to break out was because Lu Mu wanted to spend more time with his mother. Although he knew that this was an illusion and that the woman in front of him was not his real mother, Lu Mu just wanted to stay a little longer. That was all. Now that decades had passed, Lu Mu knew that it was time for him to leave. These decades were something that Lu Mu would never forget in his life. It was also the happiest time of his life. His mother in the illusion made up for his life's regrets and allowed Lu Mu to fulfill his filial piety in another way. Lu Mu said in a low voice as he reached out and hugged his mother slowly. "Mother, I'm leaving. Don't worry, I won't let you down." As he spoke, the surrounding scene began to collapse inch by inch. The illusion was directly broken by Lu Mu. In the outside world, only Lu Mu had not completed the first test. The others had either failed or succeeded, but they had all finished the test. Just as everyone was worried, Lu Mu, who had been motionless all this time, slowly opened his eyes. Seeing this, the dozen or so experts in charge of the test slowly breathed a sigh of relief. What did this kid see in the illusion? One of them smiled bitterly. They did not want Lu Mu to fail like this. After all, he was indeed a rare seedling. Seeing that Lu Mu had successfully passed, they heaved a sigh of relief. "What's wrong with you?" On the other side, Wang Kuan asked doubtfully when he saw that Lu Mu had finally broken out of the formation. Given Lu Mu's temperament, he shouldn't have spent so much time on it. He should have succeeded long ago. In response, Lu Mu only smiled and did not say anything. What made Lu Mu the happiest wasn't that he had passed the test, but that he had seen his mother, whom he had missed for a long time. Moreover, after this incident, Lu Mu realized that his state of mind seemed to have changed a little. Some of the regrets in the past had been completely made up for. He had gained a lot. Raising his head to look at the sky, Lu Mu seemed to see his mother smiling at him. The following tests proceeded in an orderly manner. Those who passed could naturally continue to stay. As for those who failed, even if they were extremely unwilling, they could only leave. There were people in charge of escorting them out of the holy temple. But in general, not many people were eliminated. After all, there was the first round of the preliminary test, and those who wanted to fish in troubled waters were all eliminated. Those who were able to last until now were all true geniuses with real talent. It was understandable. It was normal. On average, out of 100 people, only 4 or 5 would be eliminated. Different from Lu Mu, Wang Kuan and Wu Xia easily passed the confidence test. The two of them used less than a quarter of an hour to pass the test. It was extremely fast. After 3 days, everyone was done with the test, and finally, there were 10,000 people left. And these people would be disciples of the Holy Temple in the future, and the Holy Temple would recognize their status. Congratulations to all of you. From today onwards, you are disciples of the Holy Temple. Looking at the people who were left in the end, the Holy Temple expert in charge of the test said loudly. Hearing this, everyone laughed excitedly. They had finally succeeded in joining the Holy Temple. From today onwards, they would be disciples of the Holy Temple and would also be able to use the cultivation resources of the Holy Temple. In the following cultivation, there will be people in charge of teaching you. Of course, you can also use some of the cultivation mystic realms in the Holy Temple. When the time comes, someone will tell you. There were many cultivation mystic realms in the Holy Temple, and some of them could not be entered at will. However, most of the cultivation mystic realms could be used by these young geniuses. From the beginning, the Holy Temple's intention was to spare no effort in nurturing these young geniuses. Therefore, the Holy Temple would not be stingy in the aspect of cultivation resources. As soon as he finished speaking, the Holy Temple expert took out many jade bottles from his storage ring. With a wave of his hand, each genius received a jade bottle. This is a top-tier saint-level elixir, the Saint Spirit Elixir. Consider it a small reward for passing the test. Hearing this, the geniuses were in an uproar. The Saint Spirit Elixir was no stranger to them. However, in the outside world, it was extremely precious. Every Saint Spirit Elixir in the outside world was a peerless treasure that would cause a mad scramble. Among the geniuses, there were some who were fortunate enough to have consumed a Saint Spirit Elixir before, but that was only one pill. But now, the Holy Temple's greeting gift was a bottle of Saint Spirit Elixir, a total of 10 pills. Was this the Holy Temple's foundation? The top-tier saint-level elixir, the Saint Spirit Elixir, was a mere greeting gift in the outside world. It was no exaggeration to say that just one Saint Spirit Elixir was enough for many to make a breakthrough in their cultivation. With 10 pills, the geniuses present would probably be able to make a breakthrough in their cultivation by at least 4 or 5 minor realms. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they could make a breakthrough in their cultivation by one major realm. The Holy Temple's generosity was truly unexpected. This also made many geniuses feel that their previous efforts were not in vain. The Holy Temple was indeed a place where one's destiny could be changed, especially those geniuses who were born ordinary. If they did not seize this opportunity, it would be wishful thinking for them to obtain a Saint Spirit Elixir. It would be impossible for them to have such an opportunity. Looking at the excited faces of the young geniuses, the leading Holy Temple expert smiled faintly. That's it. They had underestimated the Holy Temple's foundation. The Saint Spirit Elixir was just an appetizer. There were many more things that would shock these young geniuses in the future. Otherwise, how could the Holy Temple be so confident that these young geniuses would be able to mature completely within 100 years? Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 3081. The young genius's assessment was finally over. The remaining people would be true disciples of the Sacred Palace from then on. Not only would they receive cultivation resources from the Sacred Palace, but they would also receive protection from the Sacred Palace. It could be said that they were like fish that had leaped over the Dragon's Gate. After a night of silence, an expert from the Sacred Palace came the next day and explained the rules of the Sacred Palace to the crowd. He also told them about the cultivation secret realms that the geniuses could use. In the beginning, the geniuses could use a total of 3 cultivation secret realms. There was no limit to the number of times or time they could use it. As long as they could do it, they could stay in there forever. The 3 cultivation secret realms were obviously not simple. One had rich spiritual energy, one strengthened the body, and one tempered the soul. It could be said that any of the secret realms were extremely useful to the geniuses. Hearing that, the geniuses became even more excited. From yesterday's Saint Spirit Pill to today's 3 great cultivation mystic realms, the Sacred Temple had treated them exceptionally well. Moreover, In the entire land of all living, there was probably no sect that could have the cultivation secret realms of the sacred palace. In terms of grade, it was much higher than the outside world. Therefore, after the expert from the sacred palace finished speaking, the geniuses could not wait to rush into the secret realms, wanting to experience the effects of the secret realms. The spiritual energy is too rich. Is this a spiritual spring? And there's not just one. It's all densely packed. The spiritual energy has turned into liquid. This is my first time seeing a place with such rich spiritual energy. The geniuses who entered the first secret realm were all stunned as soon as they entered. It was not that they were ignorant, but it was because the spiritual energy there was just too rich. It was so rich that it was terrifying. Even a disciple of a large sect like Lu Mu had never seen such rich spiritual energy. The Star sect was already considered a powerful sect in the land of all living. However, even in the Star sect, there had never been such a cultivation secret realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that with such rich spiritual energy, even if a pig was put in there and ate and slept every day, it would probably grow into a beast in a few years. The most ridiculous thing was that the sacred palace did not restrict them at all in such a precious cultivation place. There was no need for contribution points or anything like that, nor was there a time limit. Everyone could enter whenever they wanted, and they could stay as long as they wanted. If I cultivate here with the help of the Saint Spirit pill, I feel like I'll be able to break through within a month. One more month. I only need half a month. Hey! Damn it. I've already taken a Saint Spirit pill yesterday. If I had known earlier, I would have kept it. This was just an ordinary secret ground for cultivation. However, in the eyes of these genius disciples, it was just like a dream. As for the second and third cultivation realms, the situation was not any better. Among these prodigy disciples, there were naturally body cultivators who specialized in tempering their bodies. Their requirements for spirit chi were not high. Therefore, he did not pay much attention to the first cultivation secret realm. Instead, he headed straight for the second secret realm, which was specifically used to cultivate his physical body. This place was different from the first cultivation mystic realm. The spirit chi here was not as abundant, and it was always extremely hot. As far as the eye could see, there were many volcanoes standing in the middle. These volcanoes were real. Shao Chun and the other divine ancestors had used mysterious and powerful means to capture and bring them here. Thus, this secret realm was formed. They used the hot magma in the volcanoes to temper their bodies. Of course, there were also various formations to assist them. It could be said that this was definitely the best place to cultivate one's physical body. As expected of the sacred palace, they are so generous and unpredictable. If I cultivate here, my physical body will definitely improve further and complete a complete transformation. Nonsense. Even a pig wouldn't stand still in this place. It was the right choice to join the sacred palace. The group of prodigies entered the 3 cultivation secret realms one after another. While they were still in shock, a sacred palace ancient era expert appeared in each secret realm. The 3 ancient era experts were in charge of the 3 secret realms. Little guys, I will personally guide you in your cultivation from now on. Not only did they have sufficient resources and terrifying cultivation secret realms, but they also had ancient era experts as teachers. Ancient era experts. In the entire land of all living beings, only the sacred palace had such experts. They were second only to the divine ancestors. In the past, many prodigy disciples had not even seen an ancient era expert before, let alone a teacher. As a result, the prodigies' hearts burned even more fervently. They could already see themselves after the transformation. In the sacred palace, the prodigy disciples had already started cultivating. Everything was going according to plan. Shao Chun and the others did not need to care about these matters. Of course, Shao Chun and the others did not have the time or energy to deal with these matters. In other words, none of the sacred ancestors were in the sacred hall. They had all gone out to search for opportunities. In the face of the threat of the foreign races, Not only did the prodigy disciples need to improve, but even the primogenitors also needed to improve their strength. Compared to the prodigy disciples, it was obviously more difficult for Shao Chun and the others to improve. Therefore, there was no hope for them to stay in the land of all living beings. Shao Chun had already found his own opportunity, the incomparably precious core of heaven and earth. Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, Mo, He Zhu, Dongfang Yun, and the others were also searching for their own opportunities. At this moment, Lin Yun, who had left a few days later than Shao Chun, was shuttling through the endless starry sky. During this period of time, Lin Yun had gone to many places. It was as if she wanted to travel to every corner of the world. Such a journey was a bit lonely. He couldn't help feeling a bit lonely, but he also saw many things that he hadn't seen before. Like Shao Chun, she even sensed that the world was attached to her. Some of the new small worlds were born in them. After the previous battle, the world seemed to have begun to heal itself. This was obviously good news. However, Lin Yun was not as lucky as Shao Chun. For the time being, she had not encountered any great opportunities. Her strength also did not have any obvious improvement. Most of the treasures in the world are meaningless to me. It is indeed not easy to improve. She sighed helplessly as she hurried through the starry sky. Just as Lin Yun's voice fell, a stream of light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. An inexplicable aura spread in all directions. Sensing this aura, Lin Yun's eyes flashed. Without thinking much, she immediately chased after it, seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 3082. Lin Yun sensed an inexplicable fluctuation. She vanished on the spot in a flash and headed straight in the direction of the aura. Shortly after, Lin Yun arrived at a spatial vortex and gazed at the constantly twisting vortex. The entire starry sky was like the surface of the water, constantly churning. Inside here, she spread out her divine senses and sensed that something seemed to be taking shape in the spatial vortex. Besides, it was definitely not an ordinary treasure. Lin Yun pondered for a moment and quickly made a decision. She dashed into the spatial vortex in a flash. Then, she lost control of her body as though it was being pulled into the depths by an unknown force. This was the power of a sacred ancestor like Lin Yun. If it were anyone else, even if they were ancient creatures, they would probably be torn into pieces instantly under the pull of such power. Such power wasn't something that ordinary people could resist. Even Lin Yun had to be cautious. But with Lin Yun's strength, there shouldn't be any problem if she wanted to ensure her safety. After an unknown period of time, the suction force gradually disappeared and Lin Yun came to a stop. She looked around. It was still pitch black, but it didn't seem like an endless starry sky. Instead, she was in a mysterious place. She didn't know where she was. But soon, Lin Yun spotted a light spot. The light spot seemed to contain a world with mountains and rivers, abundant spiritual energy, and perfect rules. The light spot was only the size of a fist, but it was as though it was a world in the palm of her hand. It was extremely extraordinary. Is this a world seed? Looking at the light spot, Lin Yun's expression changed quickly. In an ancient book, Lin Yun read about the introduction of a world seed. This was definitely a treasure of heaven and earth. It wasn't inferior to the heart of heaven and earth that Shao Chun obtained. In an instant, even Lin Yun couldn't help but get excited. If she could obtain this world seed and refine it, her strength would definitely improve. She didn't expect to find such an opportunity. Lin Yun suppressed the excitement in her heart. This was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. She reached out to touch the world seed, and it didn't seem to reject Lin Yun. Soon, Lin Yun grabbed it in her hand. In an instant, Lin Yun had a magical feeling. How should she put it? It was as though she was holding a world in her hand, and everything in it could belong to her. How terrifying was it to integrate an entire world into one's body? At least, ancient creatures couldn't do it. Only a sacred ancestor like Lin Yun was able to do it. She immediately decided to refine the world seed. This world seed was a treasure that could help her improve. Holding the world seed with both hands, Lin Yun sat cross-legged in that mysterious space. Strands of inexplicable energy continuously flowed into Lin Yun's body, and Lin Yun's aura began to slowly increase. Lin Yun's cultivation, which had been stagnant for a long time, began to slowly increase. This made Lin Yun extremely excited. As expected of a world seed, it was indeed powerful. She had only just started to refine it, and she could already feel her cultivation increasing. This was something that no other treasure could do. For example, those elixirs. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even if Lin Yun ate those elixirs like jelly beans, there would definitely be no effect, and such a situation wouldn't occur. This was the benefit of a true treasure. Lin Yun also found her own opportunity here. On the other side, in the blue water world, Mu Lingxian descended once again. He had already been here once before. This time, Mu Lingxian wasn't here to revisit the old place. He was here to find a treasure. Are you sure you want to go? This isn't a joke. Lan Yu looked at Mu Lingxian and said solemnly. Mu Lingxian was actually going to enter a famous place of death in the blue water world. This place had existed since the birth of the blue water world. However, no one had ever dared to approach it, because no matter who it was, as long as they were within 10,000 miles of this place, they would immediately explode and die. However, Mu Lingxian was actually going to enter this place of death. Mu Lingxian said calmly to Lan Yu's shock. That's right. Last time, I felt that there was something inside that was very useful to me. Even if it was useful, it's too dangerous. Even world lords don't dare to go near that place. If even world lords couldn't go near it, one could imagine how terrifying that place of death was. All right, I made up my mind. Mu Lingxian didn't hesitate at all. He had already made up his mind. Moreover, there was an 80% chance that there was something he needed inside. Whether or not he could increase his strength depended on this. Since Mu Lingxian insisted, Lan Yu had no choice but to nod and agree. At the same time, Ancestor He, Mo He, Dong Fong Yun, and the others were also looking for their own opportunities. It was unknown if the heavens and earth had sensed the invasion of the foreign tribes. Hence, many legendary treasures appeared one after another. This also gave Xiao, Chun, Lin Yun, and the others hope to increase their strength and fight against the foreign tribes. As for the other half, outside the spatial fault, the foreign tribes were still sparing no effort to break through the spatial fault. As long as there were no spatial faults blocking them, they would be able to directly attack the so-called land of infinite stars. However, today a group of people from the foreign tribes came. The leader was a beautiful woman. She was extremely beautiful and didn't lose out to Qin Shu, Lu Bingning, and the others. Moreover, along the way, many foreign tribes' martial artists were very respectful to her. It was obvious that this woman's status in the foreign tribes was not low. She came directly to a palace that was as big as a continent. Within it, the middle-aged man who had met Xiao Chan was already waiting. Seeing the woman walk over, the middle-aged man smiled. I thought you wouldn't come. You've already reported the news to the emperor. What can I do? In response, the woman harumphed coldly. It was obvious that she was dissatisfied with the middle-aged man's actions. She sat down beside the middle-aged man. It was obvious that the two of them were of equal status. Hence, the woman didn't restrain herself in front of the middle-aged man. Why? It's just an undeveloped heavens and earth. You don't have the confidence to take it down? This land of infinite stars is a little different. Moreover, as a precaution, the two of us should join forces. That way, we'll have more confidence. Aren't you ashamed to say that? Two warlord kings joining forces. Won't others laugh to death if word gets out? Let them laugh. Anyway, the most important thing is to complete the mission given by the emperor. Nothing else matters. The middle-aged man and the woman spoke, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3083. Another person who was at the same level as the middle-aged man appeared on the side of the foreign race. Another person who was at the same level as the middle-aged man appeared on the side of the foreign race. Moreover, with the arrival of the beautiful woman, there were many more outstanding experts on the side of the foreign race. Outside the spatial fault, palaces that looked like continents floated in the starry sky. All the experts of the foreign race lived here. There was no way to know the number of experts, but there should be no less than 1,000,000 of them. Now, they just had to wait for the spatial fault to open. Then, they would be able to charge in and take down the land of infinite stars. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the beautiful woman smiled faintly. Then let's do it. Anyway, His Majesty has already ordered me to cooperate with you. Let's start with the spatial fault. With the two of us working together, we should be able to shorten the time. That's great. As they spoke, more experts began to appear outside the spatial fault. They intended to break the spatial fault in the shortest time possible. As the strength of the foreign race increased, the speed at which the spatial fault was being broken decreased greatly. Little Qing, who had been guarding here, naturally sensed the change immediately. Little Qing had not left the spatial fault ever since she arrived. She had been studying the spatial fault. As a spirit of heaven and earth, Little Qing seemed to have some kind of connection with the spatial fault. She could sense the extremely minute changes. At this moment, the spatial fault was collapsing at a much faster speed than before. There was obviously a problem. The spatial fault that could have held on for 100 years was now unable to hold on for another 100 years as the speed increased. Is it because of the foreign race? Little Qing murmured softly as she looked at the spatial fault in front of her. The speed had increased by so much. It definitely had something to do with the foreign race. This was obviously not good news for the land of infinite stars. After all, Xiao Chun and the others were still trying their best to increase their strength. The others also needed some time to prepare. If the spatial fault was broken before then, the plan would have to be changed. They still needed to speed up and make sufficient preparations before the spatial fault broke. Moreover, the best situation was to block the foreign race here and prevent the flames of war from spreading to all parts of the land of infinite stars. The land of infinite stars had suffered great losses in the battle with the origin world. Now, the world had just shown some signs of recovery. If they were to experience another great war that engulfed the entire world, then this world would definitely not be able to withstand it. The already fragile realm of infinite stars could no longer withstand the destruction of the flames of war. Her face was grim, but she had no way of stopping the actions of the outsiders. Even as a spirit of the world, Shaoqing was unable to pass through the spatial fault, just like how the foreign races were unable to pass through the spatial fault. I hope that Xiao Chun and the others can be faster. There's also Li Tian and Xin Yuanling. Little Qing was unable to help Xiao Chun and the others improve their strength because this was no longer something that she could do. As for Li Tian, Xin Yuanling, and the others, they had to speed up. He immediately sent the news of the spatial fault back to the temple so that Li Tian, Xin Yuanling, and the others could make preparations. Little Qing sat down cross-legged outside the spatial fault and closed her eyes to cultivate. To Little Qing, it didn't matter where she cultivated. By guarding the spatial fault, she would at least be able to detect the movements of the foreign races as soon as possible and serve as an early warning. Therefore, Little Qing didn't plan to return to the land of all life. On the other side of the land of all life, within the temple, Xin Yuanling and Li Tian naturally received Little Qing's message. After learning about the abnormalities at the spatial fault, both of them frowned. Originally, they were already on the right track. The experts of the various factions were also frantically improving their strength during this period of time. As for those prodigious disciples, with the help of the temple, their cultivation could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Of course, to truly make a qualitative leap, this amount of time was definitely not enough. But now Little Qing said that something had happened at the spatial fault. They definitely wouldn't be able to hold on for 100 years. According to Little Qing's estimation, it would take at most 70 or 80 years. All of a sudden, 20 or 30 years had been brought forward. This meant that Xin Yuanling, Li Tian, and the others couldn't continue on the same path. They had to speed up their progress. Sigh, this is going to be very stressful. There's nothing we can do about it. There must be changes at the outsider's side. We can't just sit back and do nothing. The pressure was great, but they could only withstand it and make corresponding changes. Continue to invest more and let those little guys grow up as soon as possible. That's the only way, right? Is there enough origin energy? It should be enough, but I don't know when those little guys can break through to the progenitor realm. With their cultivation, there shouldn't be any problem breaking through to the progenitor realm. The most important thing is still time. Open the rest of the cultivation mystic realms to them directly. After the discussion, Xin Yuanling and Li Tian quickly made changes. They increased the cultivation of those prodigious disciples again. According to their initial expectations, these prodigious disciples should at least reach the level of a world lord. Only then would they be useful and play a decisive role in battle. In order to cultivate these prodigious disciples, the temple could be said to have gathered all the origin energy. Many of them were obtained from the origin world. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 70 years passed very quickly. A few decades was like a day in the land of all beings. Many experts would casually go into seclusion for a few decades or even 100 years. But in these 70 years, the land of all beings could be said to have been in a race against time. Especially the temple, it could be said to have used all kinds of methods, and the results were not bad. At least 70% of the prodigious disciples had begun to fuse with the origin energy. In just a few decades, with the help of the temple, these prodigious disciples could be said to have undergone earth-shaking changes. From the cultivation of the Tao transformation realm at the beginning, all of them had advanced by leaps and bounds, and all of them had risen to the progenitor realm. This was definitely considered a terrifying improvement, but it was still not enough to face the foreign races. At the very least, those who had begun to break through to the world lord level had to succeed. Only then would they be considered to have achieved their desired goal. In these 70 years, there was no news from Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Mu Lingxian, Ancestor He, Mo He, and Dongfang Yin. No one knew where they were, and no one knew how they were doing now. Xiao Chun and the others could improve their strength, which was the most crucial for the upcoming battle. Because they were the top fighting force, Xiao Chun and the others had to be able to deal with the foreign race's true experts. Otherwise, they would have no chance at all. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3084. In these 70 years, Sacred Hall had done all they could and made all the preparations they could. In these 70 years, Sacred Hall had done all they could and made all the preparations they could. At the same time, Little Qing had also been guarding the spatial fault for 70 years. His aura was much stronger than it had been 70 years ago. Little Qing had refined 99% of the primogenitor's energy. It was completely different from before. However, Little Qing did not feel happy or gratified at all, even though his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. This was because he knew that no matter how strong he was, it was impossible for him to fight against the alien race on the other side of the spatial fault alone. As the spatial fault continued to weaken, he could clearly sense the auras on both sides. Little Qing could clearly sense how powerful the alien race was. There were many people who were comparable to divine ancestors, and there were dozens or even hundreds of ancient era beings and world lords. What kind of strength was this? Little Qing was especially wary of the two auras among them. These two auras were not weaker than him at all. In fact, they were even stronger than him. In Little Qing's opinion, these two people might have already surpassed him and the divine ancestors. They were the strongest among the alien race. After a few decades, Little Qing had a rough understanding of the alien race's strength. It was no exaggeration to say that they were much stronger than the origin world. It was no wonder that the primogenitors of the origin world were wary of the alien race. This kind of strength was enough to destroy the land of 1,000 stars. While Little Qing was learning about the alien race's strength, the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman on the alien race's side naturally noticed Little Qing. They knew that someone had been guarding the other side of the spatial fault for the past 70 years. Especially now that the spatial fault was almost transparent, they could vaguely see little Qing's figure through it. The world spirit of the land of 1,000 stars. That's interesting. It's better not to kill the world spirit. After all, it's the representative of the land. Of course, I know that. However, he's not the only expert in the land of 1,000 stars. Is that the person you mentioned last time? But after so many years, I've never seen him. Is he really as strong as you say? That person's strength should be at the divine ancestor level. However, after so many years, I think he should be able to improve further. You mean he can break through the war ancestor realm in a few decades? The beautiful woman clearly did not believe the middle-aged man's words. The two of them were war ancestor realm cultivators, above the holy ancestor realm. However, at their level, it was not easy for them to make a breakthrough. Moreover, they had done in just a few decades. The middle-aged man said with a smile, "It's just a feeling. Who knows what the specifics are?" He did not give a clear answer, but the feeling that Xiao Chan gave him was very extraordinary. He believed that this person was definitely not a simple person. Even in the myriad realms, he could be considered a stunning talent. He was looking forward to meeting Xiao Chun again. The beautiful woman curled her lips and said, "In any case, we will be able to completely break through the spatial fault in 10 years at most. At that time, we will naturally know. I want to see how the people you have been praising are like. Don't disappoint me." "Don't worry, I won't disappoint you." The spatial fault could only last for another 10 years at most. This was the final deadline. After 10 years, without the protection of the spatial fault, the land of infinite stars could only face these foreign tribe experts. The day of the war was approaching. Everyone was sitting down to make their final preparations. Especially at the sacred palace, there were terrifying auras and heavenly punishment descending every day. This was the movement of many prodigy disciples breaking through to the World Lord realm. Until now, top prodigies like Lu Mu, Wang Kuan, and Wu Xia had all broken through to the World Lord realm. Their combat strength was even stronger than ordinary World Lords. This was the terror of top prodigies. They were invincible among their peers. As more and more prodigies completed their breakthroughs, Xinyuan Ling, Li Tian, and the rest were in a better mood. At least these decades of hard work and resources were not in vain. These little guys did not disappoint them. Now, only third brother and the rest are left. Xinyuan Ling sighed softly. Now, they were waiting for Xiao, Chun, and Lin Yun. There had been no news for decades. No one knew how they were doing. In the ruins of the greater world, in that small world, Xiao Chun had been sitting there for decades without moving. It was as if he had fallen into a wonderful state. Today, Xiao Chen's eyelids finally moved slowly. Then he opened his eyes. There was a flash of light in his eyes. His aura was obviously different from before. That's right. If the middle-aged man of the foreign tribe was present, he would definitely be able to tell at a glance that Xiao Chan was no longer at the Holy Ancestor Realm. Instead, he had successfully broken through to the War Ancestor Realm. He had really completed his breakthrough in just a few decades. How terrifying was that? The world's core had been completely absorbed by Xiao Chun. His strength had also risen to a new level. Xiao Chun said expressionlessly, "It's time to change back. The spatial fault shouldn't be able to last for too long." Xiao Chun got up. Without any movement, he took a step forward and disappeared from the spot. It was still the same small mountain village. 70 years had passed, and the old people had turned into piles of yellow soil. The children had also become white-haired old men, and they were on the verge of death. These were ordinary people. Perhaps they had already fallen when you went into seclusion. They were separated by life and death. He sighed softly. This was the life of an ordinary person. To Xiao Chun, they were indeed just passers-by. There was a feeling that things had changed, so Xiao Chun did not show up. Instead, he chose to leave. After all, there were many people who did not recognize him anymore. There was no need to disturb the lives of these people. The small world had left a deep impression on Xiao Chun, but it was a pity that he did not belong to this small world after all. Xiao Chun came out of seclusion and left. No one knew about all of this. On the other side, Lin Yun had also refined the world seed. She opened her eyes, and a bright light flashed. Like Xiao Chun, Lin Yun's cultivation had also reached the War Ancestor realm. She had broken through the limit of the Holy Ancestor realm and reached a whole new level. Her strength was much stronger than before. It's time to go back. She had no intention of delaying. After so many years, the situation had probably reached a point where it could explode at any moment. Since that was the case, the Holy Ancestors naturally had to show up and preside over the situation. Therefore, Lin Yun took a step forward, and her figure instantly disappeared from this mysterious space. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3085. The spatial fault had reached its limit. The invasion was imminent, and a great war was about to break out. Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the other divine ancestors came out of seclusion one after another. In the past few decades, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others had traveled outside, and each of their strengths had improved greatly. Especially Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, they had broken through the divine ancestor realm and reached the combat ancestor realm. In the land of all living beings, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others returned to the sacred palace. Xin Yuan Ling, Li Tian, and the other higher-ups of the sacred palace heaved a sigh of relief. In the main hall, all the divine ancestors gathered together. Dongfang Yun, Ancestor He, Mo He, and Mu Ling Xian had also returned. The cultivation of the four of them had also increased by quite a bit. Clearly, they had all found their own opportunities. However, because the four of them were not as strong as Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, they had not been able to break through to the combat ancestor realm this time. Previously, Mu Ling Xian and the other three's cultivation bases should have been at the minor divine ancestor realm. In the past few decades, their cultivation bases had successfully reached the great perfection divine ancestor realm. It was a big improvement, but compared to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. Looking at the faint aura emitted from Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, the four felt helpless. Although they were still divine ancestors, only they knew that Xiao Chun and Lin Yun had most likely surpassed them. The gap between their strengths was widening little by little. In addition to helplessness, there was also a trace of joy. It was very contradictory. However, when facing the alien race, the stronger Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were, the more advantageous it would be for everyone. It was an undeniable fact. First, they listened to Xin Yuan Ling and Li Tian talk about what had happened in the sacred palace in the past few decades. They learned that the prodigious disciples had all reached the World Lord realm. Moreover, under the leadership of the sacred palace, the overall strength of the land of all living beings had improved a lot. Compared to the war in the origin world, it could be said that there were new changes with each passing day. The number of experts had skyrocketed. This news was good news for everyone. Even Lin Yun nodded with a smile. Not bad. Thank you for your hard work. Xin Yuan Ling and Li Tian had indeed worked hard and made great contributions. It was because of these two that the temple was able to deal with these matters in an orderly manner. After understanding the internal affairs of the divine temple, the message about Little Qing was brought up by everyone. Little Qing, who had been guarding the spatial fault, had sent a message back a few days ago, telling everyone to be prepared. After all, the land of all living beings needed someone to guard it, and the ladies were the best candidates. Of course, the difference was that this time, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Wan were going to the front line with Xiao Chun. In the past few decades, the three of them had completely grown up. Each of their cultivations had reached the level of a world lord. They could be considered as powerhouses. Moreover, the three of them had repeatedly requested to go with Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun was glad about that. He didn't reject them and nodded in agreement. After all, there were some things that the little ones would have to experience sooner or later. He couldn't let them live under his father's protection forever, right? Xiao Chun didn't want his children to grow up in a greenhouse. Take good care of Yao Lao and the others. Before leading them away, Hundred Flower Fairy specially reminded them that the battlefield was extremely dangerous. How could Hundred Flower Fairy and the others not worry about the children's safety? In response, Xiao Chen nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'm just taking them to see it. I won't let them go to places that are too dangerous." After a few simple words of farewell, Xiao Chun quickly left the land of all living beings. He didn't take the spatial spirit boat. Instead, he went directly to the spatial fault with Lin Yun. With their current cultivation in the War Ancestor realm, their speed was much faster than the spatial spirit boat. Even Mu Lingxian and the others couldn't compare. Therefore, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun planned to go to the spatial fault first to see what was going on with their own eyes. They had already been there once. This time, they were naturally familiar with the way. Without wasting any time, the two of them arrived at the spatial fault. From afar, it was just as little Qing had said. The spatial fault couldn't hold on for too long. It was almost transparent, and it was full of cracks. It could shatter at any time. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 3086. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were the first to arrive at the spatial fault. At this moment, the majority of the land of all living beings had yet to arrive, but the two of them arrived at the spatial fault. Looking at the almost transparent fault, their expressions were abnormally solemn. "They're here." Seeing the two of them arrive, little Qing said indifferently. Then, her gaze also landed on the spatial fault. To be honest, little Qing had personally witnessed the spatial fault being broken by the foreign races bit by bit. Now, it was about to shatter at any moment. To little Qing, the only good news at the moment was the strength of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. After not seeing Xiao Chun and Lin Yun for decades, little Qing felt a sense of apprehension when facing them. Not to mention anything else, just Xiao Chun and Lin Yun's cultivation alone, little Qing could no longer see through them. It was not an exaggeration to say that Xiao Chun and Lin Yun's current strength had already surpassed little Qing's. As a spirit of heaven and earth, she was now surpassed by others. This was something that she did not even dare to think about in the past. She did not know how Xiao Chun and the rest did it. But no matter what, this was a good thing for the land of infinite stars. Because the stronger Xiao Chun and the rest were, the greater the possibility of defeating the foreign races. Unaware of little Qing's thoughts, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun looked at the spatial fault in front of them. They could already see the figures of the foreign races. Their eyes were filled with coldness. To Xiao Chun and the rest, these foreign races were invaders and enemies. On the other hand, on the other side of the fault, many foreign races looked at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun with disdain and sneers. It was as if they were not worried that the land of infinite stars could stop them at all. This was absolute confidence in their own strength. In the eyes of these foreign races, a mere land of infinite stars could not stop them at all. This was because the land of infinite stars was not the only land that they had conquered over the years. A place like the land of infinite stars was a barbarian land in their eyes. How could a mere barbarian land stop their army? Just like that, the two sides coldly stared at each other across the spatial fault. For the time being, there was still the spatial fault blocking them. Therefore, the two sides could not fight for the time being. However, there was not much time left. The spatial fault would not last for too long. After looking at each other coldly, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun retracted their gazes. It was useless to say anything now. Everything still depended on strength. When a spatial fault shattered, it would be the time for both sides to fight. At that time, it wouldn't be something that could be solved by talking. Instead, it would be a real battle. The others are already on their way here. Stop them here, and don't let them enter the land of all living beings. Xiao Chun and the others had decided from the very beginning that they absolutely could not allow the alien races to enter the hinterland of the domain of myriad stars. The aftermath of the great battle in the origin world was still fresh in his mind. The world had yet to recover. The many universes of the past were still in ruins. Although there were signs of recovery, the more it was like this, the more fragile the world became. This was because it no longer had the extra strength to go through such a chaotic war again. Moreover, the alien races were stronger than the origin world. This made it even more impossible for them to enter the hinterland of the domain of myriad stars as they wished. The spatial fault was the battlefield. They absolutely could not take a step back. Therefore, Sacred Hall had done their best to mobilize all the experts they could to the front line. Little Qing nodded slightly when she heard Xiao Chen's words. Yes. However, I have observed that a man and a woman are the strongest in the clan. They should be stronger than me. They may be your direct opponents. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were the strongest experts in the domain of myriad stars. Naturally, their opponents would be the strongest experts in the clan. Whether they could stop the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman was very crucial. If they lost even the most elite battles, then there was really no point in fighting. They would lose without a doubt. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were very clear about this. They nodded and did not say anything. They were unable to determine the strength of the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman. However, no matter what, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun would do their best. They could not lose, not only because their battle strength was heaven-defying, but also because Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were the faith of the domain of myriad stars. If they were defeated, it would be a devastating blow to their morale. Without morale, it was equivalent to collapsing without a fight. 5 days later, the army of the domain of myriad stars arrived one after another. Starships and spatial spirit boats arrived at the spatial fault. It was the first time for many people to see the so-called spatial fault. They were all shocked. Moreover, they were very curious about the race on the other side of the spatial fault. Of course, besides feeling curious, they felt even more solemn, because they knew that these xeno-race experts were extremely strong, and they were even stronger than the origin world. According to the previous plan, Xiao Chun and the others quickly prepared a temporary base. Several continents were dragged here by Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others with great power. These continents were incomplete. They were destroyed in the battle with the origin world. However, they were now the base of the domain of myriad stars. On the continents, palaces stood. Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others were on the largest continent. This was the command center of the entire domain of myriad stars. Time passed day by day. Xiao Chun and the others were fully prepared. They were only waiting for the spatial fault to shatter and face the alien races. At the same time, several continents on the alien races' side slowly flew towards the spatial fault. The two sides faced each other across the spatial fault. They looked like they were on the same level as each other. They did not have to wait for long. Early in the morning, the spatial fault that was already on the verge of collapse finally reached its limit. Along with the sound of shattering mirrors, more and more cracks appeared on the spatial fault and began to spread crazily. Like a spider web, Xiao Chun and the others sensed the abnormality. Many experts flew out and arrived at the spatial fault. They watched everything with solemn eyes, waiting for the final battle to break out. Everyone knew that the spatial fault had reached its limit. It was about to shatter. Without the spatial fault, the battle would break out at any moment. It was finally time for them to face the alien races. Under the watchful eyes of Xiao Chun and the others, the spatial fault did not last long. After 15 minutes, the entire spatial fault shattered with a muffled sound. Then, an earth-shattering, terrifying pressure swept out wildly through the shattered spatial fault. It pressed down on the many warriors of the domain of myriad stars. Just this pressure alone was unbearable for many people. They felt like their hearts were being hammered by a heavy hammer. Their auras were immediately suppressed. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 3087. Was this a greeting gift? As soon as the spatial fault was broken, the foreign race's aura suppressed everyone, shocking the cultivators from the realm of infinite stars. Sensing the aura, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Mo He, Mu Lingxian, and the others naturally couldn't remain indifferent. They hadn't even started fighting yet. If they were scared before the battle started, what would they do? Immediately, a monstrous aura erupted from Xiao Chun and the others, quickly shattering the aura from the foreign race. The aura swept across the sky. Sensing the aura from Xiao Chun and the others, the people below finally calmed down. How could they be scared just by their aura? Xiao Chun and the others would never allow such a thing to happen. As the aura from both sides clashed, the foreign race crossed the spatial fault and quickly arrived in front of Xiao Chun and the others. Millions of cultivators from both sides faced each other, and the aura became extremely oppressive. Everyone knew that a great battle was about to break out. While Xiao Chun and the others were sizing up the foreign race was also sizing up the people from the realm of infinite stars. The leaders of the foreign race were powerhouses whose auras weren't any weaker than Mu Lingxian and Mo He. It seemed that they had also reached the divine ancestor realm. However, compared to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, they were still slightly weaker. If these were the strongest powerhouses of the foreign race, the realm of infinite stars would definitely win because Xiao Chun and Lin Yun could easily kill them. However, the reality was obviously not so. The strongest powerhouses of the foreign race were obviously not limited to these because the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman that Xiao Qing mentioned didn't appear. They were secretly weighing the strength of the foreign race. At the same time, the foreign race was also secretly sizing up the strength of Xiao Chun and the others. When they looked at Mu Lingxian, Mo He, and the others, the leaders of the foreign race didn't change their expressions. Although Mu Lingxian and Mo He weren't weaker than them, they were still at the divine ancestor realm. It was hard to say who would win if they fought. However, when they saw Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, they frowned slightly. It was obvious that he had surpassed the divine ancestor realm and had reached the war ancestor realm. This kind of strength was clearly not something they could deal with. I never thought that there would actually be a war ancestor realm existence in the realm of 10,000 stars. What's the big deal? It's just two people. His Majesty and the others will naturally take care of it. Of course, the appearance of two war ancestor realm rankers was out of their expectations, but that was it. It was not enough to make them feel afraid. While the two sides were sizing each other up, two figures slowly appeared in front of the outsiders. Surprisingly, it was the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman that little Qing had mentioned. The two of them were the strongest among the foreign races. Xiao Chun and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw the two of them. Although the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman did not emit any aura, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun felt danger. They were many times more dangerous than the other foreign races. At the same time, after the middle-aged man appeared, he looked directly at Xiao Chun. He had met Xiao Chun face-to-face before. At that time, Xiao Chun had left a deep impression on him. Now that they met again, the middle-aged man revealed an expression of "I knew it." He remembered that when he first met Xiao Chun a few decades ago, he was only at the peak of the divine ancestor realm. However, in just a few decades, he had really taken that step and became a war ancestor realm expert. He had reached the same cultivation level as the middle-aged man. How is it? I didn't disappoint you, right? The middle-aged man smiled and said to the beautiful woman beside him. Hearing that, the beautiful woman also sized up Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, then smiled and nodded. A small sealed world can actually have two war ancestor realm existences. It's indeed extraordinary. For a sealed world like the realm of 10,000 stars, it was already very good that there were divine ancestor realm existences. As for war ancestor realm existences, it was almost impossible. However, now, there were two of them in the realm of 10,000 stars. One had to know that even the world where the beautiful woman was from, a war ancestor realm expert, was considered a true top expert. For a moment, the beautiful woman was a little interested in the realm of 10,000 stars. No wonder the middle-aged man directly asked the emperor to let her come and help. Looking at the current situation, the middle-aged man's choice was completely correct. If it was just him alone, it was impossible for him to have a chance of winning. We meet again. At that moment, the middle-aged man took the lead to speak. Hearing that, Xiao Chun also smiled and said, "That's right, we meet again. How is it? Have you thought it through? Do you want to fight or surrender?" In such a situation, there should be no need to answer. Surrender? Xiao Chun had never thought about it. How could his home be ruled by a foreign race? Hearing Xiao Chen's answer, the middle-aged man did not seem surprised at all. He had expected Xiao Chun to make such a choice. The middle-aged man shook his head helplessly and said, "Looks like we still have to fight. Fine, then I'll crush your belief. It won't be too late to surrender then." His eyes were filled with confidence, as if he was very confident about this battle. Xiao Chen did not say anything about it. At that moment, the beautiful woman also took a step forward and a monstrous aura soared into the sky from her body. Just her aura alone was enough to change the color of heaven and earth. Her strength was extremely terrifying. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. As she spoke, the beautiful woman immediately prepared to attack. However, Xiao Chun was not displeased at all and immediately blocked her attack. In an instant, the two of them fought fiercely. As Xiao Chun and the beautiful woman attacked, the others naturally did not stay idle. Lin Yan shouted, "Kill! Kill!" In an instant, millions of people from both sides charged at each other, and the battle was about to start. In the face of a battle that had been prepared for nearly 100 years, there was nothing much to say. The realm of 10,000 stars would never surrender to the foreign race. However, it was absolutely impossible. As for the foreign race, after breaking through the spatial fall, it was even more impossible for them to hold back. They had already spent too much time in the realm of 10,000 stars. They had to take over this place. Lin Yan also fought with the middle-aged man. His strength was not weaker than Xiao Chen's. In the fierce battle, the middle-aged man praised, "It's really shocking that people like you can appear in a mere sealed world. As long as you're willing to surrender, I guarantee that His Majesty will definitely treat you well. Your status will definitely not be lower than mine. How about that? Ha, cut the crap. If you want to fight, let's fight." Lin Yan did not waver at all. He had never even thought about surrendering and would not change his mind just because of a few words from the middle-aged man. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. The error-free chapters of Sword Master Vast Expanse will continue to be updated in the new Booksy Pavilion. There are no advertisements in the website. Please collect and recommend the new Booksy Pavilion. If you like Sword Master Vast Expanse, please collect. Sword Master Vast Expanse's new Booksy Pavilion updates the fastest. Chapter 3088. A fierce battle broke out between the two sides. The battle that had been waiting for 100 years finally began at this moment. Compared to 100 years ago, the strength of the land of 1,000 stars had increased significantly. With the help of sacred temples, unstinting efforts, or even all their resources, everyone in the land of all living beings had improved significantly. It was not an exaggeration to say that with their current strength, they would definitely win if they fought against the Origin World again. They were far stronger than when they fought against the Origin World, especially those prodigious disciples. Under sacred temples' careful guidance, each of them was extremely powerful. Even so, the land of 1,000 stars still did not have any advantage against the foreign races. The foreign races were not weak either. In terms of the number of experts, they even surpassed the land of 1,000 stars. Fortunately, the number of battle ancestors and divine ancestors on both sides was equal. There was not much difference between the two sides. This formed a subtle balance. Not bad. It's really surprising that you have such strength when you just broke through to the battle ancestor realm. The beautiful girl who was engaged in a fierce battle with Xiao Chun seemed to be at ease. She even had a charming smile on her face. With her eyesight, it was not difficult to see that Xiao Chun had just broken through to the battle ancestor realm. However, his battle strength surpassed many experts who had just broken through to the battle ancestor realm. To have such battle strength was enough to show that Xiao Chun was very talented. Xiao Chun did not reply. He did not go easy on her, but the beautiful girl did not seem to be under much pressure. This made Xiao Chun's mood even heavier. This could only mean one thing. The beautiful girl was stronger than him. Little brother, it's not easy to cultivate to the battle ancestor realm. Why don't you submit to me? Don't worry, I won't treat you badly. The beautiful woman was still trying to persuade Xiao Chun to surrender as the battle raged on. After all, Xiao Chun was not weak at all, and it would be a waste to just kill him like that. It would be best if they could get him to surrender. The girl was called Zixian. She kept persuading Xiao Chun as she fought fiercely. Don't waste your time. I'd rather die in battle than surrender. You have a backbone. However, just having a backbone is useless in this world. You also need to have strength. When Big Sister captures you, you will have no choice but to surrender. As she spoke, Zixian's aura suddenly surged. Unlike Xiao Chun, Zixian was a veteran war ancestral powerhouse. Her strength was considered to be at the top of the war ancestor realm. Her aura skyrocketed, and many purple lotuses bloomed around Zixian. For a time, the sky was dyed with a myriad of colors, and under the encirclement of the numerous purple-colored lotuses, Zixian was like a fairy from the 9 heavens, charming and enchanting. Little brother, Big Sister can't bear to hurt you, so I'll take you back one last time. Do you want to surrender? Noisy. Hearing that, Xiao Chun immediately slashed out with his sword. The tip of his sword streaked through the air and headed straight for Zixian. As if she had already guessed that Xiao Chun would do this, Zixian was not surprised at all. She casually raised her hand, and a purple-colored lotus appeared in front of her. The sword ray fiercely bombarded the purple-colored lotus, and the two collided with a loud bang. Then, the purple-colored lotus was shattered, turning into petals that scattered down, and Xiao Chen's sword ray was completely neutralized. You really won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Then, I wish you good luck, little brother. Xiao Chun had no intention of surrendering at all. As soon as Zixian finished speaking, she formed a seal with her hands, and the purple lotuses around her began to spin wildly. Streaks of purple light streaked across the sky, and wherever the purple light passed, the space collapsed inch by inch. Xiao Chun was not too shocked by the purple light. Although the purple light was strong, it was not enough to pose any threat to him. However, he could not be careless. Zixian's means were definitely not limited to this. Kill. She spoke softly, and then the countless purple-colored lotuses instantly exploded, turning into balls of petals that instantly enveloped Xiao Chun. The surrounding was filled with petals, and he could not see the situation outside at all. Moreover, Xiao Chun could clearly feel that his spiritual energy was constantly being suppressed. It was as if it had formed a world of its own, and this power was somewhat similar to the sword realm. Is this the power of a world? It had the shadow of the power of a world, but it was not completely the power of a world. There was still a clear difference between the two. Just as Xiao Chun was secretly on guard, the surrounding petals suddenly rushed toward Xiao Chun. The countless petals were like countless sharp blades, and Lu Yu could feel an extremely cold aura on these petals. If he guessed correctly, these petals should be highly poisonous. As long as he was scratched, even a little, it would probably worsen quickly. Although Xiao Chun had the cultivation of the war ancestor realm, it could be said to be immune to all poisons. Ordinary poisons could not hurt him at all. Even if it was a real poison, it would not be able to take his life. However, Xiao Chun was still cautious. Who knew what the poison on the petals was? Even if it could not take his life, it would not be a good thing if it made his movements slow down. Therefore, if there was no need, Xiao Chun would definitely not take the risk. He directly used the sword realm, firmly enveloping himself within it, and fought against the sea of flowers. The power of the two worlds appeared and collided in the air. The sea of flowers and the sword qi collided crazily, and the sound of collision was constantly heard. Outside the sea of flowers, Zixian revealed a faint smile as she looked at Xiao Chun, who was already enveloped by it. Sword realm? You're quite smart. Knowing that Xiao Chun used the sword realm to block her attack and did not face it head-on, Zixian smiled slightly. If Xiao Chun had chosen to face it head-on just now, then he would have already lost, because those petals were indeed highly poisonous. Although it was unknown, even if a war ancestral powerhouse was infected, they would be instantly paralyzed. Perhaps it was only for a short period of time, But in a battle at the War Ancestor realm, there is no need to say what the result of being paralyzed would be. It was definitely enough to determine the outcome. Therefore, Xiao Qin chose to use the Sword Realm to fight against her Sea of Flowers. This was the wisest choice. However, even if he broke the Sea of Flowers, it would not change anything. He would still lose. Moreover, the stronger Xiao Qian was, the more Zixian liked him. She must think of a way to rope such a person in. This would definitely be beneficial to her. Slowly raising his hands, the Sea of Flowers that filled the sky quickly formed a tornado. Under the attack of the tornado, Xiao Qian found that his sword realm was beginning to show signs of breaking. The Sea of Flowers changed its form, and its attacking power became even stronger. Right now, even the sword realm was somewhat unable to withstand it. Not only were there petals all around, there were also gales of wind. Moreover, these storms were mixed with Zixian's spiritual energy, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 3089. Zixian's attack was indeed not to be underestimated. At least now, Xiao Qian was being suppressed miserably, and even the sword realm could not hold on any longer. However, in the face of such a situation, Xiao Qian's gaze was extremely calm. After fighting with Zixian, Xiao Qian knew that her strength was slightly above his. After all, he had just broken through to the War Ancestor realm, while Zixian had been immersed in the War Ancestor realm for many years. In terms of foundation, Xiao Qian and Zixian could not compare at all. However, this did not mean that Xiao Qian had no chance of winning. Up until now, Xiao Qian had been waiting for an opportunity to severely injure Zixian in one fell swoop. Perhaps from the looks of it, he was about to lose, and Zixian was also full of confidence. And what Xiao Qian wanted was for Zixian to relax and be careless so that he would have a chance. Looking at Xiao Qian, who was struggling in the Sea of Flowers, Zixian's mouth curled into a smile. Just as Xiao Qian had thought, Zixian was indeed full of confidence in the current situation. She did not think that Xiao Qian would be her opponent at all. So what if Xiao Qian had the cultivation of the War Ancestor realm now? He was still not her opponent. As long as she captured Xiao Qian, then the realm of myriad stars would be easy. Thinking of this, Zixian once again strengthened her attack, wanting to take down Xiao Qian in one fell swoop and lock in the victory. For this reason, Zixian even completely gave up her defense. After all, anyone could see that Xiao Qian did not have any strength to fight back at all. Therefore, it was understandable that Zixian gave up her defense and used all her energy on attacking. And Xiao Qian, who was in the Sea of Flowers and had been paying attention to Zixian, saw this scene. A smile flashed across his eyes. He had been waiting for this moment. She was sure that he did not have the ability to fight back, so she directly gave up her defense and wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Xiao Qian had guessed Zixian's reaction. Without hesitation, Xiao Qian, who originally seemed to be unable to hold on, suddenly took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. In the next second, he appeared in front of Zixian. Seeing Xiao Qian's actions, Zixian was stunned. Although she quickly regained her senses, this momentary absent-mindedness gave Xiao Qian an opportunity. Crossing through space was nothing to the War Ancestor realm, but what Zixian did not expect was how Xiao Qian could pass through her Sea of Flowers. It must be known that the entire space was confined by Zixian. How did Xiao Qian manage to come out unscathed? In fact, it seemed as if he didn't face any obstruction at all and directly appeared in front of him. It was hard to imagine, but Zixian, who had been through hundreds of battles, quickly reacted. From the very beginning, Xiao Qian could have broken his attack. The only reason he didn't do so was to make him careless and relax. He deliberately pretended to be weak so that he would think that Xiao Qian was no match for him. From the beginning to the end, he had been tricked by Xiao Qian. His face sank, but there was no time for Zixian to think about this now. Xiao Qian, who had already appeared in front of her in a flash, did not hesitate at all and directly slashed out with his sword. Heavenly Emperor slash. This was an attack that Xiao Chun created after breaking through to the War Ancestor realm. It was created on the basis of the original Emperor's sword, and its power was several times stronger than the Emperor's sword. It was currently Xiao Chen's strongest attack. In front of Zixian, Xiao Chun did not hold back at all and used his strongest sword attack. Knowing that there was only one chance, if he could not completely injure Zixian this time, it would be very difficult for him to have such a good opportunity again. Naturally, Xiao Chun would not choose to miss it. The sword slashed across, and it seemed as if there was no terrifying pressure at all, as if it was just a casual sword attack. But the more it was like this, the more Zixian's heart beat, and an extreme sense of danger instantly enveloped her entire body. Intuition kept telling Zixian that Xiao Chen's sword attack was very strong, so strong that it was a bit ridiculous. She couldn't take it head-on, or she would be seriously injured. But it was a pity that it's such a close distance, and she wasn't prepared at all. It was impossible for her to dodge it now. She tried her best to defend herself, but when Xiao Chen's sword attack struck her, a terrifying explosion erupted. A terrifying power erupted in an instant as a black hole was sliced open in the space. It was as if the space was instantly torn apart by something. And Zixian, who was in the middle, undoubtedly took the brunt of this terrifying force head-on. Such a violent fluctuation of spiritual energy attracted the attention of many people. Among them, the middle-aged man who was fighting fiercely with Lin Yun also turned his gaze over. After witnessing Zixian being devoured by this terrifying force, even he couldn't believe it. The middle-aged man was shocked by this force. If he were in Zixian's shoes, perhaps he would also be seriously injured by this force. The situation was great just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, who would have thought that things would turn out this way? Everything changed too quickly, so quickly that no one was prepared for it at all. No matter how strong Zixian was, under such a terrifying attack, it was impossible for her to escape unscathed. And once Zixian was injured, what would happen next? In an instant, the middle-aged man's heart sank a little. The battle situation seemed to be different from what he had imagined. The violent aftershock dissipated gradually. And after Xiao Chun launched this attack, his aura was also somewhat chaotic. After all, Xiao Chun came with the goal of severely injuring Zixian. So when he attacked, he didn't hold back at all and used almost all of his spiritual energy. And now, he needed some time to recover. He gazed calmly at where Zixian was. At that moment, the aftershock dissipated slowly and Zixian appeared before Lu Yu once again. He didn't manage to kill her directly. Of course, this was also within his expectations. At Zixian's level, it wasn't that easy to kill her. But looking at Zixian's current state, her left hand had disappeared entirely, and her right leg was also severed at the waist. She looked extremely miserable. It was apparent that the earlier attack had injured Zixian badly. Facing this, Xiao Chun didn't hesitate and charged forward with his sword again. "All right, it seems like I underestimated you." After suffering such a huge loss in Xiao Chen's hands, one could imagine how Zixian felt. She thought that victory was within her grasp, but who knew that she would be tricked by Xiao Chun from the beginning to the end? This made Zixian feel as though she had fallen from heaven to hell. The anger in her heart couldn't help but rise. But at that moment, after she was severely injured, facing Xiao Chen's relentless attacks, Zixian fell into a disadvantageous position in an instant. It couldn't be helped. Her injuries weren't light, and she had less than 10% of her combat strength left. Now that she was in a fierce battle with Xiao Chun, this outcome was inevitable. And Xiao Chun was also smart. He didn't give Zixian any chance to catch her breath. Instead, he leaned forward and fought with her. Take her down while she's down. That was what Xiao Chun thought. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 3090. Xiao Chun did not give Zixian any time to catch her breath. With one of her arms chopped off, Zixian could only try her best to resist Xiao Chen's attack. Looking at Xiao Chen's posture, it was obvious that he wanted to kill her directly. This feeling was not wrong. Although Xiao Qian believed that it was basically impossible to kill Zixian on the spot, given the current situation, if she insisted on fighting him to the death, he would have a chance. Then, Xiao Qian would have a chance. Even if he had to pay a price, Xiao Qian would still make a move. However, the probability of this happening should be very small, because Zixian was not a fool. She knew that it was not suitable for her to fight to the death with Xiao Qian after falling into his trap and being severely injured. In fact, this was indeed the case. Facing Xiao Qian, who had the upper hand, Zixian had already thought of retreating. This time, it was not that she was weaker than him, but that she was too careless and fell into Xiao Qian's trap. Who would have thought that Xiao Qian would actually deliberately show weakness to the enemy and find an opportunity to give her a fatal blow? Xiao Qian, I will remember you, Zixian said coldly as she looked at Xiao Qian with eyes full of anger. She could not remember how many years it had been since she had suffered such a big loss. Her consecutive victories had made Zixuan a little overconfident, which led to her capsizing this time. As soon as she finished speaking, without waiting for Xiao Qian to reply, Zixian took the initiative to retreat. Then, her figure began to turn illusory. Seeing this, a trace of regret flashed in Xiao Qian's eyes. Just as he thought, this woman was very rational and did not choose to fight to the end. Now, since she wanted to leave, Xiao Qian did not think that he could stop her. However, since Zixian had chosen to retreat, the following battle would be very easy. After all, there was no one on the side of the foreign races who could stop Xiao Qian now. Xiao Qian did not care about the leaving Zixian at all. He turned around and charged towards the battlefield below. His target was the foreign race experts. If he could kill one more foreign race expert, he could reduce the pressure on the realm of infinite stars. Naturally, Xiao Qian would not let go of this opportunity. Retreat. At the same time, the middle-aged man who was fighting fiercely with Lin Yun had a clear grasp of the situation. He immediately gave the order to retreat. Hearing this, all of the foreign beings began to retreat in an orderly manner, and none of them were willing to continue the battle. Although Xiao Qian had killed many foreign race cultivators in the process of retreating, that was all. He had not been able to stop the foreign race from retreating. Soon, he retreated to the other side of the spatial fault. How about it? Do you want to chase? Little Qing came to Xiao Qian's side at this time. This was a good opportunity to pursue the victory. But in this regard, Xiao Qian shook his head. Although these foreign races retreated, they did not panic. Therefore, they did not lose too much of their combat strength. There was actually no point in chasing after them at this time, and it would be very difficult for them to gain much. Moreover, even though they had achieved a small victory in the realm of infinite stars, they had also suffered casualties. Little Qing didn't say anything when she saw this. It was obviously impossible to defeat the foreign races in a single battle. The battle between the two sides came to an end just like that. Judging from the results, the realm of infinite stars should have achieved a small victory. This was a great boost to the morale of the realm of infinite stars. After all, the facts prove that these foreign races were not undefeatable. Everyone's eyes were filled with the joy of victory. Only Xiao Qian and the others were still as calm as an ancient well. It was especially so for Xiao Qian. He knew very well that his victory this time was entirely due to his element of surprise. After this, it would be very difficult for him to have such an opportunity again in the future. Therefore, this victory was actually more of a lucky factor. It did not mean that the realm of infinite stars was stronger than the foreign races. After returning to the encampment, before Xiao Qian could catch his breath, Songxing walked in with a terrible expression. What's wrong? Xiao Lao is injured. Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Wan had followed their father to battle this time. This was the first time the three of them had stepped onto a battlefield of such a scale. Originally, the three of them had the cultivation of a world lord, so Xiao Qian was not too worried. However, Xiao Lao was injured because he had arrived first. A look of worry flashed across his eyes. Is it serious? His life is not in danger, but he needs to rest for a while. Okay, I understand. Hearing this, Xiao Qian was slightly relieved. If anything happened to Xiao Lao, How was he going to explain it to Qin Shuru and the other girls? Since there was nothing else, Song Xing turned and left after saying that. He also had many things to deal with. After sending Song Xing off, Xiao Chun went directly to Xiao Lao's residence. Seeing Xiao Chun coming, Xiao Yao and Xiao Wan, who were guarding the courtyard, hurriedly stood up and called out, "Father." Hearing this, Xiao Chun nodded slightly. How is Lao Er's injury? It's not a big deal. He just needs to cultivate for a few days. There was no problem, but Xiao Chun was still worried about Xiao Lao's injury. After personally checking on his injury, he came to the courtyard again. "Tell me, how did you get injured?" It was not a problem to get injured on the battlefield, but Xiao Lao was different. For their safety, Xiao Chun had given them many life-saving treasures. Even if they were attacked by ancient creatures, they had life-saving treasures. At least, they had no problem retreating calmly. However, Xiao Lao was injured in the first battle. Although it was not fatal, his injury was not light. Facing his father's question, Xiao Yao had no choice but to tell him the truth. Originally, according to Xiao Qin's instructions, the three of them stayed with the main group. The foreign races that they fought were basically world lords. At first, there was nothing different. With the combat power of the three of them, they could be said to be invincible in the same realm. It was scary but not dangerous. However, later on, there was also a young man among the foreign races who had his eyes on Xiao Lao. This foreign race was very strange. His cultivation was the same as Xiao Lao's, but his combat power was extremely strong. Moreover, he had many treasures on him. Facing such an opponent who was of similar age and strength, with Xiao Lao's personality, he naturally would not back down. On the contrary, he was excited. Therefore, Xiao Lao took the initiative to ask for a battle. Just like that, the two of them fought fiercely. In the fierce battle, Xiao Lao did not fall into a disadvantage. However, the young man suddenly took out a treasure. Xiao Lao was careless and did not have time to react. Just like that, he was injured. If Xiao Yao and Xiao Wan did not save Xiao Lao in time, things would not have been so simple. A young man who was able to defeat Xiao Lao's treasure. Hearing Xiao Yao's words, Xiao Qin's expression did not change. However, in his heart, he was thinking, Xiao Lao's personality was very straightforward. If he met an opponent and wanted to fight, it would not be a problem. Unfortunately, with such a personality, it was easy for him to be at a disadvantage. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 30-91. After understanding what had happened, Xiao Qin knew that Xiao Lao had underestimated his opponent this time. This kid was just like that. He didn't care about any danger at all, and did things according to his own personality. Xiao Chan felt that the person who had injured him wasn't a simple person either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have so many treasures on him, and could even suppress Xiao Lao. Although Xiao Chan didn't know much about the strange races, he knew that the ordinary warriors of the strange races were similar to those in the realm of infinite stars. It was impossible for each of them to have so many life-saving treasures on them. He didn't even know the strength of the other party and dared to fight with his life. This was Xiao Lao's temper. Xiao Chan could only sigh helplessly. Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. These two brothers had very different personalities since they were young. Now that they had grown up, they hadn't changed at all. After personally checking on Xiao Lao's condition, Xiao Qin instructed, "Take good care of Lao Er. Let me know if there's anything." There were many things to do, and now wasn't the time to relax. Xiao Qin naturally couldn't stay at Xiao Lao's place all the time. Hearing this, Xiao Yao and Xiao Wan nodded obediently. After leaving Xiao Lao's place, they returned to the main hall. When Xiao Chun arrived, Lin Yun, Mo He, and the others were already waiting for him. Xiao Chun definitely played a huge role in repelling the strange races. If Xiao Chun hadn't injured Zi Xian, the strange races wouldn't have retreated so quickly. How is it? Is Xiao Wan all right? He's fine. He'll be fine after resting for a few days. That's good. The moment they entered, everyone was still concerned about Xiao Lao's injuries. After all, Xiao Lao was Xiao Chen's son. Xiao Chun, the strange races have retreated. However, I'm afraid that the most important thing will happen next. Everyone knew that the outsiders had not yet been defeated, and the war had only just begun. Xiao Qun agreed with this. Therefore, even after the victory, no one dared to be careless. However, during the discussion, someone spoke. Do you think it's possible to talk to the aliens? So far, we still don't know what their purpose is. Everyone present had personally experienced the strength of the foreign races. They were very strong, especially the middle-aged man and Zixian. The strength of these two people faintly surpassed Lin Yun and Xiao Qun. In the face of such a powerful enemy, everyone naturally knew that if they continued to fight recklessly, the casualties would definitely be disastrous. Most importantly, until now, they still did not know why these foreign races had invaded the domain of infinite stars. If they could talk it over and figure out the reason, they might be able to avoid a huge battle. Of course, this was not a surrender. Because from the very beginning, everyone had discussed that it was definitely impossible to surrender. Hearing this, Xiao Qun, Lin Yun, and Xiao Qing all fell silent. Negotiation? It was not impossible, but would the outsiders be willing to accept it? I think it's possible. If we can really talk it over, perhaps we might be able to resolve it peacefully. Moreover, the spatial fault has shattered, which means that the domain of infinite stars is no longer protected and will have to face contact with the outside world at any time. Our understanding of the outside world is indeed too little. This time, it was the outsiders, but who would it be next time? Moreover, they knew nothing about the world outside the domain of infinite stars. So if they could make peace with the outsiders on one hand, they could resolve the problem of the war, and on the other hand, they could understand the outside world through the outsiders. As for why they did not choose to negotiate from the beginning, it was because the timing was not right. After all, the prerequisite for negotiation was that both sides were equal in strength. If they were not equal in strength, why would they negotiate with you? They could directly beat you into submission. Moreover, after this battle, the domain of infinite stars had displayed its strength and even won by a small margin. Thus, there was a possibility of negotiation. Xiao Qun did not refuse. If it was possible, they would naturally give it a try. This was not a problem. We'll see when the time comes. If the outsiders have any ideas, we can give it a try. Now, no one could say for sure what the outsiders' attitude would be. Regarding this, no one said much. Xiao Qun and the others were discussing the follow-up. On the other side, in Zixian's palace, Zixian, who had been severely injured by Xiao Qun, she used a few days to stabilize her injuries, and her severed arm had also recovered. Something like regrowing a severed limb was not a difficult thing for a powerhouse at Zixian's level. However, it would still take some time for her injuries to heal completely. On this day, Zixian and the middle-aged man were sitting in the courtyard. The middle-aged man looked at Zixian with a smile. How are your injuries? I'm a despicable guy. I will definitely not let him go next time. Speaking of Xiao Qun, Zixian's eyes were filled with anger. In her opinion, Xiao Qun had used a sneak attack. He was able to win because she was careless. If it was a real battle, she would not have lost at all. After fighting for so many years, when had she ever suffered such a great loss? This was only the first battle, and she was already severely injured by Xiao Qun. This caused Zixian to feel extremely displeased. Facing that, the middle-aged man smiled and said, "Isn't it because you were careless? However, that Xiao Qun is quite smart. I reckon that he had thought of a countermeasure from the very beginning. I will not give him another chance like this." Hearing that, Zixian snorted coldly. Thinking of that, Zixian was so furious that her teeth itched. To the arrogant Zixian, suffering such a great loss was indeed difficult for her to accept. The middle-aged man was able to understand. However, he did not come here to talk about this matter. Looking at the furious Zixian, the middle-aged man said, "All right, that Xiao Qun and the others have sent someone over. They want to have a talk with us." "Have a talk? You want to surrender?" "Heh, I won't agree to that." Zixian simply would not give them a chance to negotiate. However, facing that, the middle-aged man shook his head and smiled bitterly. You're thinking too much. It's not surrender, it's peace talks. Peace talks? You're thinking too much. This king will definitely take over the entire myriad star domain. How could Zixin agree to a peace talk now? After launching a sneak attack on her, he wants to have a peace talk? That's simply a fool's dream. All right, it's fine to have a talk. Don't forget His Majesty's instructions. Moreover, the Sky Dragon Galaxy in the north has been restless. That's what we need to pay attention to the most. Compared to the myriad star domain, the Sky Dragon Galaxy was their greatest enemy. They could not be careless. So, since Xiao Chun and the others wanted to have a talk, the middle-aged man felt that it was not impossible. Hearing that, especially when she heard the words Sky Dragon Galaxy, Zixin's expression became serious. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 3092. The Sky Dragon Galaxy was definitely a great enemy in Zixin's heart. A small place like the land of myriad stars couldn't be compared to the Sky Dragon Galaxy at all. The reason why Zixin and the others attacked the land of myriad stars was to unify the Fire Phoenix Galaxy as soon as possible. What Xiao Chun and the others didn't know was that the land of myriad stars was really in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. There were many worlds in a world, and similarly, there were many worlds in a galaxy, and the land of myriad stars was one of them. Compared to the other worlds in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, the land of myriad stars wasn't big at all, and it wasn't strong either. According to the previous prediction, it was already very good to have a divine ancestor realm powerhouse overseeing the land of myriad stars. Therefore, after Xiao Chun and Lin Yun broke through to the combat ancestor realm, Zixin and the middle-aged man were so surprised. After all, it was almost impossible for a combat ancestor realm powerhouse to appear in a small place like the land of myriad stars. Compared to the Sky Dragon Galaxy, the land of myriad stars was really nothing. Xiao Chun and the others had already taken the initiative to express their willingness to talk, and the middle-aged man and Zixin didn't refuse. 3 days later, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Little Qing, the middle-aged man, and Zixin agreed to meet at the center of the two sides' encampments and began the first discussion. There were no extra people, only the 5 of them. At this moment, in the starry sky, a simple short table and 5 prayer mats were just floating there. The surrounding space had long been sealed, so it was impossible for anyone to hear their conversation. Xiao Chun and the other 2 appeared first and sat on the prayer mats. Then, just a dozen breaths later, the middle-aged man and Zixin also appeared. The 5 of them sat facing each other, but Zixin's expression when looking at Xiao Chun was clearly still filled with anger. Zixin coldly rolled her eyes at Xiao Chun and snorted coldly. Obviously, she was still brooding about what happened before. It couldn't be helped. With Zixin's arrogant personality, it would be strange if she wasn't angry after suffering such a big loss at the hands of Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun smiled helplessly when facing this, and he didn't say anything. Both sides were enemies on the battlefield, so it was naturally impossible to hold back. It was even to the extent that if he had the chance, Xiao Chun would have killed Zixin a long time ago, let alone sit together and discuss things like this. All right, since it's a discussion, let's put aside the previous matter for now. Xiao Chun, my name is Qinglin. Since you guys want to talk, why don't you guys start first? Qinglin was the first to speak. Hearing that, Xiao Chun did not reject and said bluntly, since it's a peace talk, there must be a bottom line. First, it's impossible to surrender. If we can't even reach a consensus on this point, then there's no need to talk anymore. Surrendering was Xiao Chen's bottom line. This was something that could not be changed in the slightest. Therefore, they had to confirm this point first before continuing the negotiation. Qinglin and Zixin weren't surprised at all because they'd already guessed it before they met. Qinglin said with a smile, Xiao Chun, do you know what the outside world is like? Do you know how strong we are? In your opinion, Zixin and I are already the strongest people here. However, in terms of strength, the 2 of us aren't the strongest in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. There are even stronger people above us. I admit that the strength of your domain of myriad stars is indeed a little unexpected. Perhaps you can resist Xian and me, but what about after that? Can you resist the stronger people of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy? Or an existence that surpasses the Battle Ancestor realm? The moment Qing Lin opened her mouth, she made a show of strength. This was not to scare Xiao Chun and the others, but to state a fact. With the strength of the domain of myriad stars, it was absolutely impossible to resist the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. After all, there was no comparison between a world and a galaxy. To be honest, it wasn't too difficult for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy to destroy the domain of myriad stars. Hearing Qing Lin's words, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change much, nor was he frightened by his words. Seeing that Xiao Chen was still as calm as an ancient well, Qing Lin secretly raised her opinion of him. This guy was indeed extraordinary. Even to Fire Phoenix Galaxy, he would be a rare talent. Can you tell us about the outside world? Xiao Chun and the others only understood half of what Qing Lin said because Xiao Chun and the others didn't know anything about the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Since they didn't know, they naturally couldn't understand the meaning of Qing Lin's words. Qing Lin didn't hide this and explained it to Xiao Chun and the others. It wasn't a secret anyway. After hearing Qing Lin's words, Xiao Chun and the others had a strange look in their eyes. So there were galaxies outside the world? Every galaxy contained countless worlds, and the domain of myriad stars was just one of them. In this way, the domain of myriad stars was indeed no match for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Xiao Chun and the others didn't doubt this at all. Just like the Great Thousand World back then, could it be an enemy of the entire domain of myriad stars? It was obviously impossible. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Chun said, "I see. However, I'll still say the same thing. The domain of myriad stars won't surrender." Xiao Chun didn't know what the result of surrendering would be, but this was a bottom line that was non-negotiable. In response, Qing Lin smiled and said, "It's not impossible, but under the circumstances of not surrendering, the domain of myriad stars must admit that it's a member of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and obey the galaxy's orders." At this point, Qing Lin paused for a moment and then added, "There are some things that I can't tell you for the time being, but Xiao Chun, you should understand that the domain of myriad stars is a part of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy in all aspects. This is undeniable. Therefore, in the end, the living beings of the domain of myriad stars are also living beings of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Therefore, there's no doubt about obeying the galaxy's orders, and this is also our bottom line. Of course, if you can agree to this, we can reserve the position of the domain of myriad stars and let the people of the domain of myriad stars manage the domain of myriad stars. This is already the biggest concession. They wouldn't let outsiders manage the domain of myriad stars and would still maintain everything in the domain of myriad stars. The only thing they had to do was to obey the galaxy's orders. However, as soon as Qing Lin finished speaking, Xian, who was at the side, spoke up. "No, that's not enough. Xiao Chun has to follow us to the galaxy and serve the galaxy." As she said that, she glanced at Xiao Chun with a smug expression, as if saying, "How is it? I said you can't escape from me, right? Serve the galaxy?" Hearing this, Xiao Chun frowned slightly. It wasn't that he was conflicted, but he thought of his family. If he went to the galaxy, what would happen to his family? Please add, vote, recommend. The error-free chapters of Sword Master 8 Desolation will continue to be updated in the bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please add and recommend the bar. If you like Sword Master 8 Desolation, please add. Sword Master 8 Desolation bar updates the fastest. Chapter 3093. After learning that there was a galaxy outside the heavens and earth, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy was so vast. To be honest, Xiao Chun was very interested in the outside world. In the land of infinite stars, Xiao Chun was already considered the strongest existence, but in the entire Fire Phoenix Galaxy, he was nothing. According to Qing Lin and Xian, although there weren't many combat Ancestor Realm experts in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, there were still quite a few. However, Xiao Qian still couldn't make up his mind to leave the land of infinite stars and head to the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. After all, Xiao Qian was no longer alone. He had to think about his family before doing anything. Seeing Xiao Qian's silent appearance, Qing Lin and Zi Xian didn't urge him. They just waited quietly at the side. Similarly, Lin Yun and Little Qing also fell into silence. It was obvious that they were weighing the words of Qing Lin and Zi Xian. If what Qing Lin said just now was true, then it was not impossible to accept. After all, the land of infinite stars belonged to the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Moreover, Qing Lin had promised that the people of the land of infinite stars could manage it themselves. Normally, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy wouldn't interfere with the internal affairs of the land of infinite stars. It was only when needed that the land of infinite stars had to listen to the orders of the galaxy. In the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, many worlds were like this. After a moment of silence, Xiao Qian finally looked up at Qing Lin and Zi Xian. "Give me some time to think about it." There was no way to give an answer for the time being. Xiao Qian indeed needed some time. Qing Lin wasn't surprised and smiled. "Sure, send someone to inform me when you've thought it through. In addition, even if you go to the galaxy, you can actually bring your family along. Although the combat ancestor realm isn't the strongest in the galaxy, you don't have to worry about the treatment. Bring your family along, and they can also get better cultivation resources. Moreover, you can hold a position in the upper echelons of the galaxy. It's actually a kind of protection for the land of infinite stars. Therefore, you have no reason to refuse." Qing Lin explained the benefits of going to the galaxy to Xiao Qian. These words were not false. Even if a War Ancestor Realm powerhouse was not the strongest in the entire Fire Phoenix Galaxy, he could definitely be considered a powerhouse. Therefore, for the War Ancestor Realm, the treatment given by the galaxy was actually very good. At least, it was much better than staying in the domain of myriad stars. Qing Lin thought so. As for family, there was no need to worry. Qing Lin also had family. Moreover, like Xiao Qian, he had joined the star system from another battle of Earths. Now, in the galaxy, Qing Lin was different. She was living a good life. Moreover, she was treated with envy. According to what Qing Lin said, Xiao Qian had no reason to reject it, because it was the most suitable choice no matter how one looked at it. Hearing this, Xiao Qian nodded. Yes. After casually replying, the few of them ended their conversation. Although there was no result for the time being, it wasn't too bad. At least the relationship between the two sides had eased a little. Now, it was up to Xiao Qian and Lin Yun whether they agreed or not. The two of them were War Ancestral powerhouses. Qing Lin and Zi Xian both hoped that they could go to the star system. As for Mo He, Dongfang Yun, and the others, although Qing Lin didn't say anything, it was obvious that she didn't value them. Mo He and the others' cultivation was only at the sane ancestor realm. There was no way they could compare with Xiao Qian and Lin Yun. Even if they went to the star system, they could only be Xiao Qian's subordinates. After returning to the station, Mo He, Dongfang Yun, and the others were already waiting. Everyone gathered in the main hall. Xiao Qian told everyone about the content of the negotiation. There was nothing worth hiding. Anyway, they would know sooner or later. Moreover, it wasn't a bad thing. Hearing Xiao Qian's words, Mo He and the others fell into silence. To be honest, what Qing Lin said was indeed tempting. After all, the conditions were good. There was no harm to the domain of myriad stars. The only problem now was whether Xiao Qian and Lin Yun were willing to agree or not. Of course, this was their private matter. The others couldn't make the decision for them. After some discussion, the final decision fell on Xiao Qian and Lin Yun. If the two of them agreed with Qing Lin, then the domain of myriad stars was not unacceptable. Xiao Qian and Lin Yun still didn't give an answer on the spot. After dispersing, Lin Yun took the initiative to look for Xiao Qian and said with a bitter smile, "Brother Xiao Qian, what do you think? What do you think? What about you?" Hearing this, Xiao Qian didn't answer but asked instead. Seeing this, the two of them looked at each other and then smiled. In fact, they already had an answer in their hearts. From what Qing Lin said, joining the star system was definitely beneficial. Moreover, Even from a perspective of the domain of myriad stars, it was necessary for the two of them to join the star system. After all, if they could occupy a place in the star system, they would have more authority to speak. At that time, they would be able to seek better benefits for the domain of myriad stars. As for continuing to fight against the star system, it obviously wasn't a wise choice now. Firstly, it was because there was no irreconcilable enmity between the two sides. Secondly, the domain of myriad stars was definitely not a match for the entire Fire Phoenix star system. Continuing to fight would only increase the number of casualties. Agree to Qing Lin's request. However, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun didn't plan to bring their families along. They would go and see the situation first. If it was really as Qing Lin said, it was fine to bring their families over. Without saying too much, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun both made their choice. Soon, 3 days passed. Qing Lin also received a reply from Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Hearing that the two of them agreed to go to the star system, Qing Lin smiled slightly. See, I told you they would definitely agree. Hearing this, Zixian curled her lips and said, Nonsense, they're not idiots. Why wouldn't they agree? All right, you'd better tell His Majesty about this as soon as possible. The matter of the domain of myriad stars has dragged on for too long. And this time we obtained 2 Battle Ancestor Realm powerhouses. His Majesty will definitely be happy. Hearing this, Qing Lin smiled and said, although they spent a lot of time in the domain of myriad stars, there were unexpected gains. Qing Lin had also done a great service this time. Moreover, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were still very young in the Battle Ancestor Realm. It could be said that they had great potential. They might have a chance to break through to a higher level in the future. Once the two of them crossed the Battle Ancestor Realm, they would definitely be high-level existences even in the entire Fire Phoenix star system. Thinking about this, Qing Lin couldn't help but smile. If that was the case, as the referral, Qing Lin would definitely benefit a lot. Taking out a token, a white-haired old man with a youthful face soon appeared in front of Qing Lin and Zixian. Seeing the old man's shadow, Qing Lin and Zixian bowed respectfully. Greetings, Sovereign. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 3094. Greetings, Dongwang. Qing Lin and Zixian bowed respectfully, while the old man nodded faintly. How's the matter with the land of 10,000 stars? Dongwang was Qing Lin and Zixian's immediate superior, but he was still not the strongest in the Fire Phoenix galaxy. In the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy, the strongest person was the Star Lord, followed by the 8 great emperors like Dongwang, and then the War Ancestor Realm powerhouses like Qing Lin and Zixian. In the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy, the number of War Ancestor Realm powerhouses should be around a few dozen, less than 100. It sounded like a lot, but combined with the huge population of a galaxy, it could only be described as rare. Thinking about the Fire Phoenix galaxy, there were hundreds of billions of living beings, but there were only a few dozen War Ancestor Realm powerhouses. Facing Donghuang's question, Qing Lin immediately said, reporting to Donghuang, the matter of the land of 10,000 stars has basically been finalized, but there are some unexpected surprises. Oh, upon hearing this, Donghuang replied with interest. Seeing this, Qing Lin continued. There are 2 War Ancestor Realm powerhouses in the land of 10,000 stars. We have already discussed with them, and they are willing to join the Faith Galaxy. A small land of 10,000 stars actually had 2 War Ancestor Realm powerhouses. Hearing this, Donghuang's eyes flashed with surprise. The land of 10,000 stars was located in the east of the Fire Phoenix galaxy, and this area was Donghuang's territory. Right now, there were only 9 War Ancestor Realm powerhouses in Donghuang's hands. Among the emperors, Donghuang's strength could only be considered the bottom, but there was no other way. The east of the Fire Phoenix galaxy was not strong, and there was no way it could be compared to the other regions. Right now, there were 2 War Ancestor Realm powerhouses in the land of 10,000 stars. To Donghuang, it was naturally good news. If he could get the help of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, Dongwang's strength would obviously rise to another level. When the time came, he would have more confidence when facing the other emperors. Nodding in satisfaction, Dongwang revealed a rare smile. That's right, as long as it doesn't touch the bottom line, any conditions can be negotiated. Try your best to bring these two back. When Dongwang said that, Qing Lin and Zi Xian hurriedly cupped their hands and bowed. It could be seen that Dongwang valued Xiao, Chun, and Lin Yun very much. If that was the case, things would be easier to handle. 3 days later, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun found Qing Lin and Zi Xian again. This time, both of them expressed that they could head to the galaxy. Qing Lin naturally had to return the favor. On top of the original foundation, he also admitted that everything in the field of 10,000 stars could be handled by the field of 10,000 stars, and the galaxy would not interfere. Other than that, the galaxy wouldn't send anyone to the field of infinite stars. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were naturally very satisfied with this concession. It could be said that with this promise, there would basically be no changes to the realm of infinite stars. Both sides quickly reached a consensus. However, before they left, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun had to return to the land of all living beings to deal with some matters. He entered the myriad star domain with Qing Lin and Zi Xian. Since everyone could be considered companions now, there was naturally no problem for Qing Lin and Zi Xian to enter the realm of infinite stars. Moreover, in order to show their sincerity, Qing Lin and Zi Xian didn't bring anyone with them. The four of them ran all the way to the land of all living beings. Along the way, Qing Lin and Zi Xian carefully observed the realm of infinite stars. There was nothing special about it, and the area wasn't too big. However, such an ordinary place gave birth to two combat ancestor realm powerhouses, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Brother Xiao Chun, to be honest, if the realm of infinite stars is placed in the galaxy, it can only be considered ordinary. Logically speaking, it's impossible for such an ordinary place to give birth to a combat ancestor realm powerhouse. Brother Qing Lin, do you mean that there are strong and weak realms in the realm of infinite stars? Of course. The galaxy divides the realms into 3 levels based on various factors. Level 1 is the highest, and level 3 is the lowest. The realm of infinite stars is only equivalent to the lowest level 3 realm. Only the weakest? Hearing this, Xiao Chun felt a little helpless. It turned out that the place he lived in could only be considered the weakest realm in the galaxy. From the size of the area, the density of the spirit energy, the perfection of the laws, and other aspects, the galaxy had a complete set of standards to evaluate it. Of course, the higher the level of the realm, the more attention it would receive from the galaxy. To be honest, the galaxy wouldn't pay much attention to a level 3 realm like the realm of infinite stars. If the realm of infinite stars wasn't in the Fire Phoenix galaxy, Qing Lin and Zi Xian wouldn't have spent so much effort to break the spatial fault. This was because even if they conquered the realm of infinite stars, the galaxy wouldn't gain any benefits. They would even need to provide resources to support the realm of infinite stars. However, as the saying goes, the world is unpredictable. Who would have thought that 2 freaks, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, would appear in the realm of infinite stars? As they continued to go deeper into the realm of infinite stars, Qing Lin and Zi Xian slowly noticed something unusual. Chapter 3095. They chatted along the way and soon arrived at the land of all living beings. In the sacred palace, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun went home after settling Qing Lin and Zi Xian down. Since they were going to the galaxy, they naturally had to inform their families. As for Qing Lin and Zi Xian, they didn't stay in the sacred palace for long. It was their first time coming to the land of all living beings. They were curious and went out to explore. In the residence, Xiao Chun told Qin Shiru and the others about his trip to the galaxy. Qin Shiru and the others fell silent for a while. First, they were shocked by the vastness of the world. Second, they were shocked by Xiao Chen's departure. Even Xiao Chun himself had no idea when he would be able to come back after leaving this time. However, since the galaxy was so huge, Xiao Chun definitely wouldn't be able to come back in a short time. Moreover, Xiao Chun said himself that he didn't plan to bring Qin Shi and the others with him to the galaxy. At least now wasn't the time. He didn't know the situation in the outside world. Xiao Chun planned to bring Qin Shi and the others over after he settled everything. Husband, do you have to go? I have no choice. I can't refuse this time. Although Qin Lin didn't mean to force him, Xiao Chun wasn't a fool. He knew that if he refused, the galaxy would definitely not give the land of all living beings such good treatment. Therefore, Xiao Chun had no right to refuse going to the galaxy. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Qin Shi and the others fell silent. It hadn't been long, and Xiao Chun was leaving again. It seemed that they were spending less and less time together. He was getting stronger and stronger, but many things were getting out of his control. People often say that if you want to control your own fate, you must have enough strength. However, how strong must you be? For example, Xiao Chun was already a war ancestral powerhouse. He was absolutely invincible in the realm of infinite stars. Even little Qing was not as strong as Xiao Chun. But even so, Xiao Chun didn't seem to have any choice in many things. He couldn't even stand on his own 2 feet. Xiao Chun sighed when he saw the girl's dejected expressions. I'll go to the star system and settle down as soon as possible. When the time comes, I'll bring you all over. There was no way to refuse, so this was the only way. As long as it was confirmed that there was no danger, Xiao Chun brought Qin Shi and the other girls over. In response, the women nodded in agreement. Now that things had come to this was the only way. Of course, he couldn't forget about Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue. To them, it didn't matter where they were. What mattered was where Xiao Chun was. That was where they wanted to go. Several days passed in a row. Because the peace talks between the 2 sides were successful, the star system's army began to slowly retreat. Mu Lingxian, Mo He, Dong Fongyun, Ancestor He, and the others also returned to the land of living beings one after another. Before leaving, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun naturally had some things to tell them. Since they were going to the star system, they could only leave the land of living beings to them. In the main hall, Mu Lingxian and the others looked at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun with complicated expressions. Are you really leaving? Have you decided? Yes. In response, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun both nodded in agreement. Fine. Don't worry about the realm of infinite stars. Nothing will happen. Even if Xiao Chun and Lin Yun left, the realm of infinite stars was still the world of the divine sanctum. No one could shake the divine sanctum's order in the realm of infinite stars. I want to go too. But at this moment, Dong Fangyin spoke. She didn't want to stay in the realm of infinite stars. Instead, she wanted to go to the star system with Xiao Chun and the others. In response, Lin Yun gave Xiao Chun a strange look. Dong Fangyun's words were obviously directed at Xiao Chun. In fact, everyone knew a little about the relationship between the two. Dong Fangyun was interested in Xiao Chun, but unfortunately, Xiao Chun didn't respond at all. He didn't have any intention of making it clear at all. Naturally, everyone turned a blind eye to it. But now, Dong Fangyun suddenly wanted to go with Xiao Chun. This made everyone speechless and speechless. It seemed that Dong Fangyun still hadn't let it go. In response, Xiao Chun looked at Dong Fangyun and said helplessly, "Why do you have to do this? I want to see the outside world. Can't I? Now that the spatial fault is gone, you can go to the outside world to train whenever you want." The star system only asked Xiao Chun and Lin Yun to go. This didn't mean that Mu Lingxian and the others couldn't leave the realm of infinite stars. On the contrary, without the obstruction of the spatial fault, Mu Lingxian and the others could go to the star system to train whenever they wanted. This wasn't a problem at all. I want to follow you. Why? Can't I? However, Dong Fangyun obviously had an ulterior motive. Was she going to the star system? Anyone with a discerning eye could see that she was going for Xiao Chun. Dong Fangyun kept insisting. Xiao Chun originally refused, but who would have thought that this woman would go to Qin Shi and the others? It was unknown what the women said, but in the end, Qin Shi and the others actually asked Xiao Chun to bring Dong Fangyun along. He was a little speechless, but there was nothing he could do. After arranging the matters of the divine temple, there was actually nothing much to arrange. In the end, Xiao Chun brought Xian Yuan Ling, Long Qing, Dongfang Yun, and Lin Yun along with Li Tian, Lin Yuan, Lin Hu Monk, Taoist, and the others on the road to the star system. There was nothing to worry about at the divine temple. According to Qing Lin, the current Fire Phoenix galaxy wasn't considered chaotic. It was basically a unified situation. The entire star system was overseen by the Star Lord, and it was divided into 8 regions. Each region was under the jurisdiction of a Star Emperor. The realm of infinite stars belonged to the Eastern region, which was under the Eastern Sovereign. Qing Lin, Zi Xian, and the others were also kings under the Eastern Sovereign. Since the Eastern Sovereign had agreed to Xiao Chen's conditions, there was definitely no one who dared to have any ideas about the realm of infinite stars. However, with the disappearance of the spatial fault, people from other realms would definitely head to the realm of infinite stars to train. Different realms were connected, and this wasn't a bad thing for the realm of infinite stars. No matter what, the realm of infinite stars was still ruled by the divine temple, and this was approved by the Eastern Sovereign. No one could oppose it. Even if something happened that the divine temple couldn't resolve, the Eastern Sovereign could handle it. Hence, Xiao Chun and the others didn't need to worry. The most important thing to pay attention to now was Xiao Chun and Lin Yun's meeting with the Eastern Sovereign. After all, the two of them would join the Eastern Sovereign's camp, just like Qing Lin and Zi Xian. Qing Lin and Zi Xian didn't say much about the Eastern Sovereign. Even when Xiao Chun asked, Zi Xian only smiled strangely. Well, you'll know when you see him. Simply put, he's a strange old man. Please add, vote, recommend. The error-free chapters of Sword Master 8 Desolation will continue to be updated in the hand-fighting bar. There are no advertisements in the website. Please add and recommend the hand-fighting bar. If you like Sword Master 8 Desolation, please add. Sword Master 8 Desolation hand-fighting bar updates the fastest. Chapter 3096. They left the land of 10,000 stars. Because the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy was too large, and the distance between the heavens and the earth was extremely far, there were countless spatial passageways in the Fire Phoenix galaxy. These spatial passageways were not temporary. Instead, they had always existed stably. The Star-Lord and the rulers worked together to open them, and used all kinds of treasures to ensure their normal operation. Even an ordinary person without any cultivation could use such a spatial passageway. Moreover, it would greatly increase one's speed. It was the first time Xiao Chun left the land of 10,000 stars. He did not walk far before he saw a small continent. There were no other buildings on this continent. There was only the entrance of a spatial passageway. Of course, there were also martial artists from the galaxy guarding it, but their cultivation bases were not high. This is the spatial passageway of the galaxy. This was the first time Xiao Chun had seen such a spatial passageway. Of course, he was not curious because he could easily do such a thing. The truly difficult part was to ensure the normal operation of this spatial passageway and spread throughout the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy. According to Qing Lin, such a spatial passageway could be seen almost anywhere in the Fire Phoenix galaxy. There was at least one such spatial passageway at the entrance of every world to ensure the connection between the heavens and the earth. As for the spatial passageway in front of them, it had just been opened not long ago and was specially built for the land of 10,000 stars. Xiao Chun did not say much about the galaxy's generosity. He could only say that it was rich and imposing. With the land of 10,000 stars foundation, they could only maintain 10 such spatial passageways at most. After all, they were like gold-swallowing behemoths. Every minute and second consumed a lot of resources. Let's go. With a chuckle, Qing Lin took the initiative to walk into the spatial passageway. Seeing this, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others followed closely behind. Through this spatial passageway, their speed was indeed much faster and it was extremely convenient. They did not need to do anything and could directly reach their destination. Xiao Chun and the others had long been used to the feeling of traveling through space. A few days later, they arrived at Emperor Dong's palace where Emperor Dong was. This was the center of the entire Fire Phoenix star system's eastern region. Although it was called a palace, it was actually a huge continent. It was much bigger than the land of all living beings. Everyone who lived on this continent belonged to the Emperor Dong's palace. No one else had the right to live on this continent. Without a token, even a divine ancestor would be killed if they were to barge in recklessly. Under the lead of Qing Lin and Zi Xian, the group quickly entered the Emperor Dong's palace. From a great distance, Xiao Chun and the others could see that at the very center of the continent, there was a towering palace towering between the heavens and the earth. He really didn't know how such a palace was built. Even a mountain peak in front of it was as small as a small mound. That would be Emperor Dong's palace. It's also where Lord Dong Wang holds his meetings. Of course, it's usually empty. As they flew towards the huge palace, Qing Lin explained. Qing Lin had a helpless expression on her face when she mentioned Emperor Dong's palace. Clearly, Qing Lin did not know what to say about Dong Wang. With their speed, they soon arrived at Emperor Dong's palace. It was completely different from the huge city they had imagined. Although there were many houses around Emperor Dong's palace, it was obviously not a city. First of all, there was no city wall. Second, the layout of the houses was very messy. There was no plan at all. It seemed to be randomly arranged. Some of the houses were connected together, forming a city without city walls. There were people coming and going, and it was very lively. However, some of the other houses were in groups of 3 to 5, and some were independent. It looked very messy. Why? It's different from what we imagined. Zi Xian asked with a smile, as if she had guessed Xiao Chen's thoughts. Xiao Chen did not hide it. Yes, it's a little different. These houses are the residence of the martial artists in Emperor Dong's palace. There are no rules about this. Anyone who joins Emperor Dong's palace can find a place to build their own residence. There are no restrictions on this. Moreover, after the houses are built, the array masters of Emperor Dong's palace will personally inscribe spirit arrays for free. You will know about this in the future. Let's go and meet Sir Dong Huang first. He did not expect Emperor Dong's palace to have such a rule. However, Xiao Chan was very satisfied with it. There are not so many rules and regulations, and it was relatively relaxed. This was what Xiao Chan wanted to see. Of course, it was normal when he thought about it carefully. After all, no one who could join Emperor Dong's palace was weak. Emperor Dong's palace did not care about ordinary people. To put it bluntly, in the entire Emperor Dong's palace, the weakest person was an emperor. Moreover, in Emperor Dong's palace was generally a servant, an ordinary soldier. This was the confidence of Emperor Dong's palace. If they were in the realm of 10,000 stars, they would not even dare to think about having Emperor Dong's palace as servants. Along the way, Qing Lin and Zi Xian met many acquaintances. After greeting each other, many people looked at Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others curiously. Obviously, everyone was very curious about these unfamiliar faces. Along the way to the bottom of the huge palace, they heard laughter coming from afar. Has the matter of the realm of 10,000 stars been settled? Qing Lin. Following the voice, a burly man appeared in front of Qing Lin. With a hearty smile on his face, he hammered Qing Lin. In response, Qing Lin scolded him with a smile. You barbarian, didn't I tell you not to hit me when you see me? Haha, I forgot. You contacted Zi Xian for the matter of the realm of 10,000 stars, not me. The two exchanged a few words before Qing Lin turned around and introduced him. This is Lai Wan, the king of our Emperor Dong's palace. The burly man, Lai Wan, was the same as Qing Lin and Zi Xian. He was a war ancestor and had a high status in Emperor Dong's palace. Hearing Qing Lin's words, Lai Wan was very enthusiastic and took the initiative to greet Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. You two are from the realm of 10,000 stars, right? I didn't believe Qing Lin when she said that there were 2 war ancestor realm masters in the realm of 10,000 stars. But now, it seems that this little brat wasn't bragging. Everyone will be part of Emperor Dong's palace in the future. With your cultivation, you two will definitely be crowned as kings. When the time comes, let's drink together. Also, if you want to build a house, let me know. I can help. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3097. He chatted with Lai Wan for a while. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were interested in this burly fellow. Not bad. In fact, ever since they arrived at Emperor Dong's palace, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun had fallen in love with the atmosphere here. It was completely different from what they had imagined. There was no sense of scheming against each other. Although they all belonged to Emperor Dong's palace, they felt more like a group of like-minded friends who had gathered together. There was no need to guard against anyone, let alone fight openly or secretly. Actually, this is normal. After all, no one who can join Emperor Dong's palace is weak. Moreover, Emperor Dong's palace has always had sufficient cultivation resources. No one cares too much about power. Qing Lin said slowly as they walked. It was naturally the best that Xiao Chun and Lin Yun liked Emperor Dong's palace. Not long after, the group arrived at the back of the huge palace. Compared to the majestic palace, this place was only a simple wooden house. The courtyard was not big, just like an ordinary farmhouse. Without wasting any time, they pushed the door open and entered as if they were in their own home. "Old man, we've brought him here." As soon as they entered the courtyard, Xian shouted. Soon, the door was opened and an ordinary-looking old man walked out. He was the owner of Emperor Dong's palace, the strongest person in the entire eastern region, Emperor Dong. However, when Xiao Chun saw Emperor Dong, he was stunned and said with his mouth agape, "Village chief, it's you?" This person was none other than the village chief in the mysterious small world of the Great Thousand World. Xiao Chun had lived there for decades. However, when he came out of seclusion to refine the heaven and earth's core, the village chief was already dead. He did not expect the village chief to be Emperor Dong. Moreover, all along, Xiao Chun did not notice anything strange. He did not even notice the slightest aura from Emperor Dong. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Qing Lin and Xian were stunned. These two knew each other? On the contrary, Emperor Dong said with a smile, "Aha, I knew you would have such an expression. Why? Are you so surprised to see me? I really didn't expect this." In this regard, Xiao Chun said helplessly, "Who would have thought that the village chief of an ordinary village would actually be the strongest person in the entire eastern region?" This was indeed a little too inconceivable. Following the conversation between the two of them, Qing Lin and Xian gradually understood the situation. Xian immediately spoke with dissatisfaction. "So you've been to the realm of myriad stars a long time ago. Then why did you make us wait outside? Are you kidding us?" When Dong Wang entered the land of infinite stars, the spatial fault had not been broken yet. Dong Wang said with a smile, "I'm just curious. I'll go take a look myself." The spatial fault naturally couldn't stop an expert at Dong Wang's level. To be honest, Dong Wang had already toured the entire domain of 10,000 stars before they met. Qing Lin and Xian were speechless. This old fellow was just so unreliable. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were naturally conferred the title of king by Dong Wang. As for Xin Yuan Ling, Long Qing, Li Tian, Lin Yuan, and the others, they became the subordinates of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun respectively. This was the case in Emperor Dong's palace. Any king could have his own subordinates. Did your family come? After doing all this, Dong Wang personally brewed tea and asked Xiao Chun with a smile. Dong Wang seemed to know Xiao Chun like the back of his hand. He knew that Xiao Chun valued his family very much. Xiao Chun didn't hide this from him. "Yes, it didn't come with me for the time being." "Haha, then quickly build a house of your own and move over. My Emperor Dong's palace is pretty good and it's very safe. Don't worry." Since Xiao Chun had joined Emperor Dong's palace, his family could naturally live in Emperor Dong's palace. Xiao Chun nodded in agreement. With just a simple interaction, Xiao Chun felt a sense of belonging to Emperor Dong's palace. Whether it was the subordinates or Dong Wang, Xiao Chun had a good impression of them. It seemed that joining Emperor Dong's palace wasn't a bad choice. After chatting for a while, everyone bid farewell to Dong Wang. As they didn't have their own residence for the time being, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others could only stay at Qing Lin's place for the time being. Qing Lin's residence wasn't far from the palace. There were courtyards around it, forming a small town. The people who lived here were all Qing Lin's subordinates. It could be said that this small town was Qing Lin's territory. Everyone obeyed Qing Lin's orders. There were all kinds of shops on the streets. Although it was small, it had everything. Along the way, many people bowed to Qing Lin respectfully. They also smiled and nodded to Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the others. These shops were opened by my subordinates' family members. They lived together in Emperor Dong's palace. When they had nothing to do, they made these little things. Those who knew how to brew wine opened a restaurant. Those who knew how to refine weapons opened a blacksmith shop, and those who knew how to refine elixirs opened an elixir pavilion. As they walked, Qing Lin introduced the place. In this place, Qing Lin and her subordinates did not need to spend any money to enjoy anything. After all, they were all friends. They made these things just for fun. No one took it seriously. Soon, they arrived at Qing Lin's residence. Unlike the land of infinite stars, Qing Lin's residence didn't have any cave dwelling. It looked like a simple courtyard. However, the illusion was very beautiful. There were pavilions and lofts, rockery and lakes. Brother Qing Lin, why didn't you open up a cave dwelling? Lin Yun asked curiously. With Qing Lin's strength, it wasn't easy for him to open up a small world. In this way, the courtyard could be larger. Under normal circumstances, warriors would be more willing to live in a cave dwelling. Only ordinary people or low-level warriors would build a simple house like ordinary people to live in. Qing Lin smiled and said, "Feel it carefully. Moreover, in Emperor Dong's palace, no one would open up a cave dwelling. I believe you won't either." Hearing this, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were suspicious. They tried to feel it carefully. For a moment, both of them were stunned. Not to mention the rich spiritual qi. After all, this was Emperor Dong's palace. It wasn't strange to have such rich spiritual qi. However, what really shocked Xiao Chun and Lin Yun was the origin energy floating in the air. That's right, the origin energy, which was extremely precious in the land of infinite stars, was floating around here. Although it was very thin, it really existed. They could feel the origin energy all the time. In this way, warriors who cultivated an Emperor Dong's palace would have a chance to break through to become a world lord even if they didn't have the origin energy. Even for experts at the level of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, this origin energy was extremely useful. How could they not be shocked? Looking for collection, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. When we have nothing to do, we just gather together to drink and chat. You'll know in the future. Yes, Brother Xiao Chun, I heard that you haven't brought your family over yet. How about it? Do you want me to make a trip to the domain of myriad stars? It just so happens I'm going out in a few days. While they were talking, Lai Wan came over and volunteered himself. He and Lai Wan were already familiar with each other. He knew that Lai Wan was not scheming, at least in front of him. However, Xiao Qin still wanted to pick up Qin Shu and the others personally, so he declined with a smile. No need. I'll go by myself. Haha. Qing Lin has already said that brother Xiao Chun values his family very much. It seems that it's true, but you also have a beautiful woman by your side now. Saying so, Lai Wan turned his head and glanced at Dongfang Yun, who was sitting at the next table. His face was full of an expression that all men understood. Xiao Chun was a little speechless about this. Everyone felt that Dongfang Yun had something to do with him. They didn't even need his explanation. Of course, the way Dongfang Yun looked at him was indeed misleading. At this time, Dongfang Yun, who was sitting with Lai Wan's family, seemed to have sensed something. She turned her head and looked at Xiao Chun, then revealed a sweet smile. In Emperor Dong's palace, almost everyone had a family. This place was like their home. From kings like Shao Chun to ordinary emperor realm servants, they all had their own family. Moreover, they all lived in Emperor Dong's palace. Noticing Shao Chun and Dong Fangyan looking at each other, Lai Wan laughed loudly. "Ha ha, brother Shao Chun, you can't fail to live up to their good intentions. Let's drink." In response, Shao Chun curled his lips and was speechless. This Lai Wan was a blabbermouth. His mouth was full of nonsense, and he liked to play matchmaker. Everyone drank. At this time, Dong Wang and an old O slowly walked in from outside the courtyard. Seeing Dong Wang, Shao Chun and Lin Yun were taken aback. They were about to get up, but Lai Wan and the other king spoke first. "Old man, why are you so late? Come, come, I've already poured the wine for you." Good, good. Regarding Dong Huang's arrival, no one was restrained in the slightest, as if they were entertaining a friend. Dong Huang didn't seem to care about this. He came to the table with a smile and sat down. "You guys are welcoming Shao Chun and Lin Yun today. It has nothing to do with this old man." As he spoke, Dong Huang looked at Shao Chun and said, "Shao Chun, Lin Yun, this is my wife. You can call her Old Chun." Dong Huang's wife looked like a child with white hair, but her skin was extremely good. Hearing this, Shao Chun and Lin Yun also hurriedly bowed. In response, Elder Chen nodded with a smile, looking amiable and amiable. Even when Dong Huang and his wife came, the atmosphere didn't weaken at all. As the owner of Emperor Dong's palace, Dong Huang got along well with everyone. They joked with each other, and Dong Huang didn't care at all. Moreover, everyone seemed to be used to this way of getting along. Shao Chun and Lin Yun also slowly understood that in Emperor Dong's palace, there didn't seem to be any rules. Even when facing Dong Huang, everyone was more like friends. There were no false pleasantries. This was really a miraculous thing. "Brother Shao Chun, when do you plan to pick up Shui, Ro, and the rest?" Lin Yun asked with a faint smile. Originally, she was worried about coming to Emperor Dong's palace, but now, it seemed that she didn't need to worry about it anymore. Since she was very satisfied with Emperor Dong's palace, she naturally wanted to bring her family over as soon as possible. After all, this place definitely had a better attitude than the land of infinite stars, especially the cultivation environment. In response, Shao Chun said with a smile, "Let's wait until the house is built. We can't let Shui, Ro, and the rest stay at Qinglin's place." "Well, that's good too. Then we'll go back together." Okay. When there was nothing going on, there were no restrictions in Emperor Dong's palace. Shao Chun and Lin Yun could also leave Emperor Dong's palace freely. Therefore, the two of them could plan their own time, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 30-99. They drank for an entire night. The people in Emperor Dong's palace were indeed enthusiastic. They were extremely welcoming towards Shao Chun and Lin Yun's arrival. After a night, Shao Chun and Lin Yun began to plan to build a residence. The two of them could choose any place in the entire Emperor Dong's palace. Shao Chun and Lin Yun chose a place that was not close to the others. However, it was not far from Qinglin and Zixian's residence. The construction of the house was not difficult. After all, there were so many people in Emperor Dong's palace. With everyone's help, the construction speed was very fast. Moreover, the materials used were the best. The people in Emperor Dong's palace had experienced this many times. They were already familiar with it. According to Shao Chun and Lin Yun's request, the house was quickly built. However, it was not over yet. On this day, Lai Wan took the initiative to look for Shao Chun and Lin Yun. He looked at their newly built house and said with a smile, "Not bad. However, we are still lacking something. It would be perfect if we could get a spiritual spring and spiritual vein." Shao Chun and Lin Yun naturally knew what a spiritual spring and spiritual vein was. It was a real treasure. Hearing this, Shao Chun asked curiously, "Brother Lai Wan, do you know where there are spiritual springs and spiritual veins?" Of course, it would be strange if Emperor Dong's palace did not have these things. Under Lai Wan's lead, the three of them quickly came to the northwest of the mainland. At a glance, There were more than 10 spiritual springs and many spiritual veins not far away. These were all accumulated by Emperor Dong's palace over the years. If they brought these spiritual springs and spiritual veins back to their residence, the spiritual energy would be extremely dense. They were definitely good stuff. There were also spiritual springs and spiritual veins in the sacred palace. However, regardless of quality or quantity, they were not as good as Emperor Dong's palace. At least 5 or 6 of these spiritual springs were supreme grade spiritual springs, and spiritual veins were the same. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun naturally chose these supreme grade spiritual springs and spiritual veins. The Emperor Dong's palace was indeed rich and overbearing. They did not even send anyone to guard such a treasure. However, no one dared to have designs on the Emperor Dong's palace. Using its power, he moved the spirit spring and spirit vein directly to his residence. For a moment, the spirit qi in Xiao Chen's residence was extremely abundant. Just a single breath was enough to make one feel relaxed and happy. If such spiritual energy was placed in the outside world, it would definitely be enough to shock countless people and make them go crazy. With the spirit spring, spirit vein, and the house completed, the next step was to inscribe the formation. Although Li Tian and Xian Yuanling also knew how to draw arrays, one of the kings of Emperor Dong's palace was also an array master. Furthermore, his grade was much higher than Xian Yuanling and Li Tian's. Therefore, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun naturally invited him to personally draw the array formation. If it were anyone else, it wouldn't be easy for this king to personally take action. However, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were different. Both of them were kings of Emperor Dong's palace and knew this person. Therefore, when Xiao Chun and Lin Yun approached him, this person nodded and agreed without hesitation. Having an array master of the War Ancestor realm personally draw the array formation was not a privilege that ordinary people could enjoy. After the array formation was completed, the house was truly completed. Defensive array, offensive array, and spirit gathering array. The seemingly simple house had a total of hundreds of array formations. Moreover, each array formation was of an extremely high grade. After the array formation was completed, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun planned to return to the land of infinite stars to bring Qin Shu, Lu Bingning, and the rest over. The Emperor Dong's palace was very different from what they had imagined. Now that the two of them had integrated into the Emperor Dong's palace, they naturally wanted to bring their family over. However, just as the two of them were about to leave, Qing Lin came to them and said with a bitter smile, "Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, I reckon that you will only be able to return to the land of infinite stars later. There is a mission." The Emperor Dong's palace had a mission. Hearing this, Xiao Chun asked curiously, "What is it?" It is said that a War Ancestor realm elite has appeared in one of the realms. However, this person's cultivation method is strange. He only broke through to the War Ancestor realm by sacrificing living people. Hundreds of millions of people have been killed and sacrificed in that realm. The Emperor Dong wants us to go there and capture him. Of course, if we really can't do it, it would be a pity to kill him on the spot. An elite who broke through to the War Ancestor realm by sacrificing living people. Hearing this, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were stunned. There was such a cultivation method in this world. They had never heard of such a thing in the land of infinite stars. However, such a cultivation method actually existed in the Fire Phoenix galaxy. There were many evil cultivation methods that could allow some ordinary people to rise to a terrifying realm in a short period of time. However, such cultivation methods often had drawbacks and were extremely evil. Therefore, there were very few people who cultivated them. In the Fire Phoenix galaxy, it was strictly forbidden to cultivate such cultivation methods. However, now that there was someone who cultivated such a cultivation method in the eastern region, the Emperor Dong's palace naturally could not sit idly by. Chapter 3102. At the end of the battle, Qing Lin dragged the evil martial artist with one hand as she spoke to Xiao Chen with a smile. The mission this time was much easier, mainly because of Xiao Chen's assistance. With the addition of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, the number of King Dong's imperial palace had increased to 11 people. Hence, Emperor Dong had many more people at his disposal. In the past, Qing Lin would probably be the only one who came. It was not that she was not confident, but it would be much more troublesome. After all, it was not easy to deal with an evil martial artist of the warring ancestor realm alone. However, with the addition of Xiao Chun, everything became much easier. With the end of the battle, many warriors on the continent stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, my lord." The king of Emperor Dong's imperial palace was respected by thousands of people in the East region, not only because of their strength, but also because of their status. It was not easy to meet the king of Emperor Dong's imperial palace, which was why these people were so respectful. Xiao Chun and Qing Lin did not mind at all. They simply nodded and did not say anything. Just as the two of them were about to leave, there was a sudden change. The originally calm space was quickly torn open. Then, a green light flashed, but the target was not Qing Lin and Xiao Chun. It was the evil martial artist who was controlled by Qing Lin. Everything happened too quickly. Moreover, judging from the aura of the person who attacked, it was obvious that he had reached the warring ancestor realm. He killed the evil martial artist who was controlled by Qing Lin with just one blow. Who is it? Although she reacted immediately, she was still a step too late. Looking at the evil martial artist who was dead after one blow, Qing Lin's face darkened. She immediately shouted angrily and spread out her divine thought quickly, shrouding the spatial crack. A warring ancestor realm expert was definitely not from Emperor Dong's imperial palace. So who could it be? Was there a hidden warring ancestor realm expert in the East region? This was almost impossible. Even if there was, they could not let him escape. When it came to evil warriors, the Eastern Emperor's palace would definitely crack down on them, even if it was a war ancestor realm warrior. At the same time that Qing Lin shouted angrily, Xiao Chen's speed was even faster. He had already slashed out with his sword and headed straight for the spatial crack. The sword tip fiercely hit the spatial crack, but was blocked by a black flame. The two sides were in a stalemate. In the end, the flames and sword light slowly dissipated. After a head-on collision, a cold snort came from the spatial crack. However, this person clearly had no intention of tangling with Xiao Chun and the others. He took the opportunity to retreat. It seemed that he had been hiding here for a long time. The Emperor's Palace. The Emperor's Palace's palace. The Emperor Dong's palace. The Emperor Dong's palace. The Emperor Dong's palace's palace. The Emperor's cultivations is emperors cultivators is emperors emperors of the Emperor. In addition to the official members, there were many registered members of Emperor Dong's palace. Many forces were registered members of Emperor Dong's palace. Not only were these nominal members unable to obtain cultivation resources from Emperor Dong's palace, but they also had to pay tribute to Emperor Dong's palace every year. However, after they became registered members, they also received the protection of the Emperor Dong's palace. To put it bluntly, they were using money to pay protection fees. Following the order of Emperor Dong's palace, countless people in the eastern region were on the move. Countless people were searching for the whereabouts of the mysterious man. Almost all suspicious people were interrogated. Of course, none of this had anything to do with Xiao Chun. The kings were only responsible for finding that person and killing him. While waiting patiently for the arrival of Qin Shi and the others in Emperor Dong's palace, Lin Yun had already rushed to the land of infinite stars. Calculating the time, she should be on her way back now. With the existence of the space tunnel, it was very convenient even if the distance between heaven and earth was extremely far. Especially for the kings of Emperor Dong's palace like Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, they could use these space tunnels at will. After waiting for about 5 or 6 days, Lin Yan finally arrived at Emperor Dawn's palace, safely, with Qin Shiru and the others. Upon arriving at their new home, Qin Shiru and the others quickly got into the mood and began to decorate. The new home built by Xiao Chun and Lin Yan was built with the best materials. Even the cave abode of the sacred palace could not be compared to it. This was because many of the materials in Emperor Dawn's palace were not available in the land of infinite stars. In particular, those formations were of a much higher level than those drawn by Xinyuan Ling and Li Tian. Not to mention these two guys, during this period of time, a king in Emperor Dawn's palace was learning the way of formations. Father, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here is too rich. Xiao Chun, Xiao Qing, and Bairua sat together while Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others said in shock. In the land of infinite stars, the two little guys had seen the world. However, when they arrived at Emperor Dawn's palace, they were still shocked by everything in front of them. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was definitely the richest they had ever seen. In response, Xiao Chun smiled. You'd better behave yourselves here. Don't provoke others. Don't worry, father.